Okay. Just in case you didn't have time to say hello to everyone, we're going to have a community wall outside where you can have a look who is who and where they're from. Otherwise, we also, of course, have an app which I highly recommend you to download. And there you can also connect with people, message, arrange meetings, and do all the possible stuff. There's even a business Tinder. That should be fun. Otherwise, today, we're going to have a lot of presentations. We're going to have not 15, but 17 presentations I calculated. We're going to have a training session, roundtables, of course, networking dinner in the evening, so the day's full. Get ready. For our keynotes, I'm quite happy to have today Ross, who's opening the conference in a few seconds, Nisreen from the International Monetary Fund, and then Neil Barnett from Heathrow. He's closing the conference today. And otherwise, we have quite a list today with speakers and moderators. So I hope you get a chance to talk to everybody and meet everybody and learn a lot today as well. Of course, thank you to our partners. They're all in the exhibition area. It's very packed this year. So again, lots of new solutions, lots of new information for all of you. And if you need anything, you can find us around. Normally someone's at the registration desk. This year, all-female organizing team, so very happy for that. Right, all the presentations will be in the media center, and we're going to send the link after the conference. So don't worry, you get all the presentations, all the slides afterwards. Wi-Fi is BT Open Zone, and the password is conf 2017, CONF 2017. Yes, and yeah, once again, do download the app. You should have logins in your email account. They were sent out yesterday. If you're having issues with logins, please come to talk to us. Yes, and of course, as usual, please share feedback. Good, bad, anything in the app or in the SurveyMonkey. We're going to, of course, send the link after the event. And of course, the tweetback cards. You see the colorful cards on your tables. This is our analog feedback system. You can write your comments, questions, ideas, anything to each presentation on these cards and then give them to us, and we're going to hang them in the back of the room. And so the speakers and everyone can see them. So speakers always appreciate them, so please do leave your feedback. Yes. And once again, tonight is the networking dinner at the parlor. If you still haven't registered, please do come to the reception. Or if you decided to change your mind also, please just let us know. And my favorite part of the conference is introducing the two wonderful people. I'll start with Jeff. Where's Jeff? Oh, there he is, of course. Do I need to introduce Jeff to anybody? This is Jeff. He's going to be chairing today the stream and the day two tomorrow. And now I want to give the floor to wonderful Dr. Michal Zur from Kaltura. I don't think I need to introduce you either anymore.
Well, second warm good morning to everybody and welcome to Intranet Reloaded London. This is my second time here. Unfortunately, I missed out on last year. My first time was 2 years ago. And as Anastasia introduced, I'm Michal. By the way, a lot of you have a bit of a challenge saying Michal, but you can practice it throughout the day. So I'm the president and co-founder of Kaltura. And the mission we set to ourselves at Kaltura is to develop video technology that powers pretty much any video experience and workflow. And over the past 11 years, we've executed on this mission by working with the largest cloud TV providers, with many, we have quite a few customers here, large universities, and it's pretty much across any industry and use case of video. So it's from cloud TV services to internal video communication, to learning, training, collaboration, communication, creating knowledge within the organization. So as you can imagine, I'm quite passionate about video and how you guys might be embracing video or using video within your organization. And I've actually asked some of the speakers also to maybe touch on it. I know one of them for sure is going to be touching on it to kick off the day. And 2 years ago, when I participated in Intranet London, by the way, how many of you participated in the previous Intranet London events? Raise your hand. And in Berlin? Okay, well, that's why there's so many familiar faces here. And I get 2 years ago, and since many of you were not here 2 years ago, I actually felt that it was necessary to explain why video, why now. And the presentation mostly focused on actually why video is such a powerful tool for conveying information, for engaging. It's actually one of the only forms of data where you can tell whether somebody is engaged with the content. How much did they watch? What did they do? Because of the time aspect of the video. And I feel that we're quite beyond that conversation right now. So it's not about why video and how to use video most effectively and why it's so easy to use video and what are the video tools that are available nowadays. It's a lot about what are your users and customers actually expecting. And as I'm speaking through this presentation here, it's actually getting ready for Gen Z employees. So somebody actually asked me, what is Gen Z? There's a lot of argument around what is Gen X, what is Gen Y, what is Gen Z. According to the terminology I use, Gen Z is pretty much everybody who was born since the mid-90s. So some say post 9/11, but let's say post mid-90s, which means that these employees are pretty much accustomed to internet since a very young age. They're a growing percentage of the population. Some say that North America, they're about already 20% of the population. And here across Europe, I'd say slightly lower, so in the tens of the percent. And highly visual, that's very important about Gen Z. Highly connected and collaborating. By 2020, there'll be a significant percentage of the workforce, and slightly beyond that, much more. And think of it, even I myself, I'm selling to many of Gen Z decision makers, so I need to make my pitch much more compelling, perhaps to speak over video, to make it more visual, and so do you. And it's not only internal employees. Many of you, I'm assuming, at least from my conversations with quite a few of you before this event, are internal communication, IT, knowledge. I mean, these are the types of titles I missed out on. I spoke to, and maybe I missed out on additional areas, but it's mostly in the zone of HR, internal communication. But also when we communicate externally, it's a lot about how we engage these Gen Z users. So the big question I want to ask is, are we actually ready for them? And as we're kind of going through the presentations here, to also think through, are we ready for this generation that is so highly connected, visual, engaged, and looking to be engaged, and our users and customers who are pretty much the same as well. And when you think of video, because video is probably one of the most engaging forms of communication as it evolves, think of it across, not only internally, because as one of the speakers here will talk about, employees are also our brand ambassadors. So the way we communicate internally is how we also communicate externally many times. And the way we communicate with our employees is how they then represent the organization outside of the company. So how do we hire with video? How do we teach with video? How do we certify with video? How do employees connect? And this is the expectation. It's not only about the tools, it's about the expectation of this generation to actually use these visual tools to connect, to share, to collaborate, and then to sell. Think of sales reps who are now using video in order to engage end users with video. Think of marketers that are using video. Think of customer support people who can use video in order to illustrate things for the end users. But we should start doing this internally, because otherwise we will not be able to engage externally with our audiences as well as we have. So I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, who will also be using video as part of his presentation. Many of you know Ross if you participated in the Boston event. Ross is from Wells Fargo, responsible for internal communication at Wells Fargo, and has actually a nice anecdote that he'll be sharing about how let's call it, non-professional video creator created a video that actually had quite a bit of success internally, and that's the power of video and the power of video engagement. So please welcome Ross, our first speaker for today.
Thank you. Whoa, this thing's on. Excellent. So good morning. Wow. Morning, I'm still drinking coffee. Morning. So I wanted to start today to talk a little bit about why we're here. Hopefully all of you have some foot in the door with your intranets, with your internal communication. That's where I've been at Wells Fargo now for upwards of 23 years. I started when I was 7, I think. And this is a space that we talk about a lot. We're communicators. We're in communication, whether we're using web tools, whether we're using video, whether we're using other intranet tools to do that. We communicate, and we talk about this stuff a lot. But do we do this stuff? And that's what I'm hoping we'll get to spend some time talking about today. Doing this stuff is more important than talking about it. And this is really part of the reason I think video has had such an advent, because it's not passive, it's active. It's engaging the people who are watching it, as opposed to text. I might read a little bit and then somebody taps me on the shoulder and the phone rings and I'm distracted and oh look, there's a bird. Video keeps you there. Otherwise you have to find the pause button and rewind and all that sort of thing. There are many other ways to keep your employees, your people, engaged. And that's what I want to spend a little bit of time digging into with you today as we talk about some of these themes on this first slide. The first piece is really kind of foundational. And this is how you kind of start your journey and think about, where are you? I saw some of the conversations happening last night and listened in and participated in a few in the icebreakers for those that were here. And the conversation for me always has to start with, where are you? How many people are in your organization? What do they do? Are they in the field? Are they at a computer? Are they running around, or are they staring at a monitor? Are they in the same location? They can talk in the hallway? Are they global? Wells Fargo has 325,000 or so employees across the globe. We don't get to have meetings face-to-face. We almost never have meetings face-to-face. I'm in meetings all day with people who sit down the hall. I'm in my office, they're in theirs, and we're on the phone because that's what we're used to now. And frankly, because there are 3 or 4 other people on the call that are in San Francisco, and I'm in Charlotte, and somebody else is in India, and somebody else is in Manila. And you're not going to get all those people in a room, so why have a few in the room? Because that sets up a disparity. So you can't have these kinds of engagements and conversations without having that virtual connection. And if you don't know where you're starting from, it makes it really difficult to think about, why are we doing this? What do we want from our intranet? What are we going to go and accomplish with all of the things that we're so proud of producing, all of the content that we put out there? Doesn't really matter if we're not thinking about the audience. And that starts with knowing where you are, knowing where you're starting from. And the second concept, and we talk about this one a lot, and I hear it, it's the litany, it's the biggest complaint. If we could just get our executives engaged, if we could just get the budget, if we could just get this stuff, the leaders that you need to have engaged are sitting around you today. And those executives, those are important and very helpful, but they tend to follow others who put their big toe in the water and see if it's warm first. And you are the folks that they will follow once they see that success. And that leadership, as a word that is more generic than management, leadership starts with us. Whether you have people that report to you or not, whether you have 10 layers above you or 10 layers below, you lead. And you lead, once again, by doing. The next conversation that happens all the time is around risk. And I work for a bank, and we're very risk averse. In a risk averse industry, we're risk averse. And this is a case where our information security folks, where our folks who want to talk about what you can and can't do, what you can and can't say, want to proofread everything. They want to read through everything. And they want us to operate on a model that they call business need to know. And that definition gets to be very challenging in this space. What do you really need to know to get your job done as an employee at your companies? Is there more that you might like to know that would help you get your job done better? So it's a balancing act to talk about that risk versus return. And next, I want to dig into a little bit of the differentiators. This is a space in the intranet, and for me and for our intranet, it's really far more about interaction and collaboration. It's not just about customizing and saying, who are you, what do you do, let me serve up the content that's most relevant for you. It's including that end user, that consumer, that person who's taking in your content in creating the content. And the video I'm going to show here in a few slides was created by one of our employees who's actually a mortgage originator who has nothing to do with video production. And that's a scenario that happens when you foster a culture that says your contribution matters. And those contributions that all of the employees make are what make your intranet better. And then back to another piece that I think fringes off a lot. And for me, I'll be candid, mobile's kind of a distraction. Everyone thinks it's got to be mobile. Mikal was just talking before. She said, I don't do laptops anymore. It's all my phone or a tablet. Mobile does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as we might think in many cases. It certainly matters if your employees are in the field. It certainly matters to your executives and your leadership that needs to have that access while they're in the airport, that needs to make use of that 5 minutes waiting for an elevator. But to the rank and file, to most of your individual contributors, people tend to want to leave work at work. They're not checking your enterprise social network on the weekend. Oh, there's a fun one, let me add some more to that. They're not doing that over dinner with their family. They might be on Twitter or Facebook or some of those other channels, but not your work channel. And those are the times when mobile tends to be consumed. So think about your mobile offering as a very tactical offering that needs to allow that bare minimum and make it easy and simple for folks to consume and do what I'll call light duty interaction, like things, adequate comment, but not author a file that you're going to put as an attachment in an email. So I started talking about know where you are, but almost more important sometimes is knowing where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish with your intranet? One of the conversations last night, we were talking about doing measurement, and there's a leadership directive to kind of, let's redo our intranet. And I do what I call throw a classroom of kindergartners at it. Why? Why do you need to redo your intranet? Well, it's old and it's kind of stale, and we want it better. Why? What are you hoping your employees are going to do differently? Do you have some research that says they're disengaged? Are you having trouble getting important corporate messages to get consumed? Why? Why are we doing this work? And knowing why it's the end all be all. Once you know why, then your path to figure out how to get there becomes clear. You've got to know where you're headed, or you'll never get there. So there's a whole bunch of building blocks, and what this slide really is intended to portray is the reality that your intranet provides a way to connect the dots, and here are some dots to help illustrate that point. We're connecting the dots with the intranet. We're forming connections between people, between those people and other people, of course, between those people and the content that matters to them, between those people and the communities, the topics, the themes. We're connecting those things. And connecting things is critical. One of the things I do at Wells Fargo is I happen to be involved. We have these things we call team member networks. A lot of companies call them team member resource groups. I'm a member of a resource group that we call Diverse Abilities Team Member Networks. These are for people that have a diverse ability. Diverse abilities is a really interesting segment. We have team member networks for Black, African American, Middle Eastern, Asian, et cetera, et cetera. It's this whole diversity and inclusion element that Wells Fargo is really into. But for diverse abilities, it's particularly challenging. This is a segment that doesn't have common ground. There's no reason that someone who's deaf understands what it's like to be blind. And that person who's blind doesn't really have a concept of what it's like to be an amputee. And that amputee can't begin to talk to you about what it might be like to have any of the thousands of different cognitive disabilities that are out there, which is about 70% of all the disabilities. So this is a large community, and it's a community that has always struggled with forming connections. Once we opened up a social network for this community, they started to connect in ways that they had never done before. Never done before. Because they had that common ground, that common place that said, here we are and we're talking about this. Sure, people with diverse abilities get charged up and happy about being able to overcome and deal with their challenges, but so do the rest of us. So does everyone. So that unique attribute that simply says, this matters to me, is what they connect around. And these functions on the intranet are what work. So this whole business of intranet and socializing the intranet, and frankly, we have real trouble with that word, social, because people tend to think of it as an antonym to business, right? I'm working on some business, got some business to do, I got more business. Whoa, my brain's full. I need to take a break. Let me head over to the break room, or step out in the hallway, or have a conversation at the water cooler, or I could jump into our social network, because that's not work, that's social. And that's not how we use it at all. Social for us is really better termed as interactive. It's a way to have those conversations, deal with that content that's relevant, that matters to us, that might not be interesting after we're off the clock, but might also be interesting. But it transfers all of that conversation, all of that content, all of those things that we then become a part of to be content that the rest of the team members, which is what we call our employees, can then consume. Our intranet has two very clear segments. our old intranet. And this is the intranet that most of us are familiar with. Corporate Communications owns it, they run it, they proofread it. Nothing goes out there unless 3 to 5 people have edited it. It's the voice of the company. It's we, it's us, it's our. Puff your chest out, you're a part of this company, it's us. And then there's our social intranet. And that's not the voice of the company anymore. That's the voice of the team members. This is user-generated content, and it is quickly eclipsing that official voice, making a lot of people uncomfortable because, whoa, this is my career. I write this content. I proofread it. I run it through those channels. The risk guy signs off. The HR person signs off, and we get it done. You can't just give them a pen and let them publish. Yes, you can. That trust in your employees comes back. And this next slide is the video I mentioned before. This comes across, well, I'll let it speak for itself. Again, remember, a mortgage originator, he runs a YouTube channel for his daughter. So he started playing around with video, and he created this video for us.
Wells Fargo is everywhere, around the globe and around the clock. And we're always working to bring more intelligence and clarity to our customers and our company. Many of us use social media at home, but how can we effectively use social media at work? We are exploring new ways to communicate and collaborate. Collaborating worldwide depends on all of us staying connected. That's why we're introducing a new way of working. Collaboration made simple. Using a central hub to capture discussions, comments, and thoughts creates a collective online stream of consciousness. This constant flow of knowledge and ideas can influence the market and set the pulse of the company. It's a way to let people know what you're up to. It's an opportunity to be heard and tell people what you think. This is what I think. But unlike other forms of social media, this is just for Wells Fargo. You can form smaller groups based on common interests, making 100,000 people feel like 100, or even 10. It's a place to brainstorm, get your ideas on the table, and be recognized for your contributions. No matter where you are or what time it is, you can easily share the knowledge that powers our business to greatness. So now what? It's time to watch and learn. Check out all the training materials and listen to what people are saying. Log on and check in. Once you've got the hang of it, it's your time to shine. Share observations, a story, an announcement, or just something insightful. We don't want to hear what you had for breakfast. We do want to hear something that can help us become the leading financial services company in the world. But don't write a novel. Keep it simple. Just a few lines will do. Links, photos, and documents work too. We're witnessing a renaissance in the ways we connect. And as a company built on innovation, Wells Fargo is putting the power of social media to work. So have no fear. Social tools will not distract you. They won't replace email, meetings, or calls, but rather it will enhance them. Flatten the organization. Speed up the time to communicate. Make us all more real, more human. Are you ready to improve the way you work and think twice before hitting the reply all button? Quit working in a vacuum and start working better together. Collaboration made simple.
I love that line about think twice before hitting the reply all button. We had, this has been probably 6+ months ago. We had a Friday where someone sent an email out to a really, really large distribution. I'm talking about 100,000 or so people. And then someone did a reply all. And then someone else did a reply all. And then about 20 people replied to all to say, please stop replying to all. It literally brought down the email servers. But it's a perfect example of how email, though some still love it, though some still can't live without it, I can't live without it, but I try to keep it in its place. Because every interaction that we have through email, unless it's that 100,000 distribution, even then though, it's a siloed dead-end conversation as opposed to an interaction that you can have using social tools today. Saves that information, gets it out of your in-basket, shares it, it leverages a concept that I hope, how many of you have heard of working out loud? Hashtag WL? Yeah. So working out loud is, I mean, it's been around for a long time, right? Back when smoke signals were used. That's kind of working out loud, right? Anybody can see those, right? But working out loud is another way of saying, here's how we're taking the information that we know a few slides back and sharing it. And those conversations that we tend to have with 3 or 5 people to talk about that PowerPoint deck for this pitch that we're doing for this other thing are great, but once you have them out loud, that doesn't mean you're broadcasting it. You're simply making it available so that team member that joined half a continent away or 2 continents away who happened to be involved in similar work can chime in and say, you know, we did something like that before. And here's a document that'll help you. And all of a sudden your work gets done faster and it's better and it's got more perspectives and you didn't even know it could happen until you did it. I'm sorry this came across so tiny, so I'm glad the decks are being made available, but this is a thermometer I came up with a while back when we were talking to executives about what do you do and how do you do it? And frankly, again, this is as important or more important to all of the folks who are participating in that content everywhere. Most people who get engaged through a browser are consuming. I think the stat for external social media it's dramatic. It's like 90% of all the people who are on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, et cetera, don't publish, don't comment, rarely even like. They consume. Something like 45% of all Twitter accounts never sent a tweet. They're consuming. And on an enterprise social network, that metric still stays weighted, but it's a lot different. The target we shoot for there is not 90% consuming, it's 60%. So we have a lot of people creating communities and groups using our social network, and they spend a lot of time thinking about how can we get everybody engaged. If you can get 40% engaged, you're batting 1,000. I don't know what the term is for cricket or soccer, but I know cricket's much bigger here than baseball. So, but in baseball, batting 1,000 means you're hitting a home run every time. And in this case, that engagement is really important for that 40% to provide the content that the other 60% are going to make use of. And frankly, a lot of times it doesn't matter if your employees personally engage. All they have to do is see other people's voices be heard. As soon as the CEO blogs and someone else posts a comment and the CEO replies to that comment, you just saw someone else's voice be heard and you feel that. My voice could be heard if I chose to use my voice. Has as much benefit as actually having your voice be heard. This is where I encourage all of you to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Are you spending more time talking about your intranets than you are getting engaged with your intranets? In Boston, it was interesting. I spoke on the second day, and I noted everyone sat in the same tables all day the first day, all day the second day. How many of you are here with coworkers? My challenge to you is to spend the next 2 days ignoring them. On breaks, switch your table. Talk to some people you haven't talked to before about their intranets, about their hopes and dreams, their issues and their challenges. It's not often we have these opportunities to learn more from our peers. And this conference venue is ideal for that. We've all been to the 5,000 or 10,000 person conferences, and they're fun, but you don't have the opportunity you do here. And I ask you to make use of that and tap into each other's brains and figure out not what you can then talk about, but what you can do to make your intranets be what you know they can be. So I don't know if we want to take questions or anyone has any comments about Wells Fargo. Certainly we've been in the press a lot lately, and I'm trying to see Anastasia. Do we have time?
Yes.
Questions from anyone? He is. Our CEO, Tim Sloan, blogs on our intranet. All of his direct reports got an email that I happily was CC'd on that said, you will also blog on our intranet. We do events that we call live chats with all of our operating committee and executives. They'll literally pick an hour and they will make themselves available and say, hey, here I am. What questions do you have? What's going on? What do y'all think? And without video, just text, people chime in. Thousands of employees join those and absolutely look for those opportunities to connect. So, yes. But not until after we had success under our belts. Not until after other leaders sort of blazed the trail. Good question. Any others?
Moments, for example.
I heard you despite. The question was how many employees are actually using Team Moments. So the target I mentioned before, 60% consuming, 40% engaged in some form or fashion. We're not quite there yet. As a regulated industry, we have this label. It's called regulated users. These are team members, in our case, who deal with investment vehicles, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, et cetera. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, FINRA, all say that any electronic messaging they do has to be archived and retained for 7 years. Happens a lot in government, happens a lot in healthcare, if any of you are in those industries, and certainly financial services. But the challenge with that percentage of our population is we have to put in this hefty back-end system, and we're not quite there yet. So roughly 1 in 5 of our team members actually can't even participate today. But of those that can, and we include our contractors and managed resource, there are about 250,000 team members participating now. Most only consuming. Great question. I see 2. We'll start here and you'll be next.
What did you just mean by your comment on the last sentence on the question?
Do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm Jan from Germany, from a law firm called NER. Can you elaborate on the last sentence of the answer you just gave before, where you said basically that the CEO, the management, only got on after other leaders showed or were successful? So what kind of leaders first showed how communicating can be done across the intranet?
Right. So as you can imagine, with a company as large as 325,000, we have multiple tiers. And there are senior vice presidents and executives of different divisions who, for whatever reason, maybe they're a Gen Z, maybe they're simply have an affinity for technology, maybe they're a friend of Ross's, whatever it might be, they were the early adopters. They started communicating with their departments in using some of the live chat technology that we put in, using some of the blogging, using some of these strategies. And once they got traction, and team members in those groups, employees in those groups, were showing higher scores for loyalty, lower attrition rates, more engagement, those are the metrics that then mattered. There was also a bit of trepidation around what I call pie in the face. I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to come across looking silly. I'm used to somebody else making sure I spell words right because I'm not a great speller, or my grammar sucks, or whatever it might be. And to get engaged and do that authentically, personally, as opposed to have your team of communicators polish and sand off all the rough edges, makes a lot of executives, traditional executives, nervous. So it takes a few to break down that barrier before the others jump in. And frankly, I tell executives, you know, if you're a great speller, make an effort. Misspell a few words. Forget to capitalize something. The level of authenticity that comes from those little errors that we're so phobic about is dramatic. One of our executives, Steve Ellis, is he's a leader of our group around innovation. Long been known as sort of a Mustang wildcard, and he will misspell and not capitalize a single word in a 4-paragraph blog post all day, every day. And everyone knows it's Steve, and it's authentic. And that authenticity means more than just about anything. And I know I'm running long now, but I promised one more question, and we'll wrap.
Hi, my name is Christina from Siemens in Germany. And I have a few questions, 3 actually. So the first question is...
I'm sorry, we're done. Go ahead.
You mentioned you have the old intranet, which is more corporate communication driven, and your social network. So first question is, does the old intranet still grow? Second question is, do you measure if the employees still use the old intranet? And third question is, if the results that you see or the feedback from the social network from employees, do you use it to develop or to put it in the old intranet, the feedback?
Great questions, and they're all related, so that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Our old intranet does still exist. And my role over the next, I want to say a year, but it's probably more like 5, is to integrate the two, to introduce the interaction into the old intranet. And functionally, that's easy. I can slap on the ability to add comments or like things or share things to just about anything. But culturally, that's tough. That's that paradigm where those communicators who want it polished and, whoa, don't sling mud on my article by throwing an ugly comment on there and stealing my limelight. So they do still exist separately. That integration has started in small ways, and in the end, it really needs to be one. It's kind of like the Highlander movies, if anybody has seen those. There can be only one. And in this case, that shift, it's kind of like the success story happening to sort of prove the value, and nobody died. That says, wait a minute, this works really well. Let's start to shift. And so we've already integrated a lot of those pieces where we do commenting, and we do add some ability to like things and share things, et cetera. But the voice of the company versus the voice of the employee are still notably different. What's interesting is that they're more notably different based around specific leaders than they are around the intranet. So you know if it's coming from Joe, it's not really Joe. That's his team.
But do you measure that the old intranet is still used from the employees?
Well, it's tough to measure because in our case, it's a mandated start page for everybody's browser. So we get hits. So thanks for prompting me along.
Well, first
But-
of all, I must say I've been watching you on the live stream as you're speaking, which is
Oh
kind
no,
of a weird thing
I
to
forgot
do.
about that camera.
Yeah, but
I'm glad I did though.
Yeah, and if we forgot to share this awesome piece of news, this is live streamed, so I think it's the first time it's being live streamed.
I think we need to turn the camera to the audience a few
Yeah,
times.
so you guys can say hello to all of your friends at work.
Thank you. I'll be
Thank
around
you,
for the
Ross.
next day and a half.
Amazing presentation as always. And I'll say that I love the part that you mentioned about the mobile first, because it's true. I mean, mobile first is sometimes overrated in the sense that people don't actually create most of the documents and stuff. But actually for consuming content, I mean, I was thinking of it as I was watching this live stream. I mean, for watching videos, definitely. And then what do we use these devices for? It's mostly for capturing images or videos, and that's the power mostly for field force employees or sales reps or anything. I mean, mostly consuming and the stuff that we actually want to create with these devices. So I'd love to invite our next speaker up here, Dr. David Weinreich, who's head of business development at Pradina. And he's going to be sharing a solution case study, 5 years of an intranet. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Good morning. So, before I introduce myself and before I introduce the customer, I'd like to explain why I'm using this picture. What on earth this spaceman has to do with an internet project. Well, spaceman itself doesn't have actually anything to do with the content of the internet. But it's just a matter of perspective. Because what I'm going to talk about today is 5 years that we have spent together with the company SHOT, and 5 years we've been working with them together on an internet solution. That's a journey. It's a journey that we've spent 5 years together. And there's also a perspective of two different sets of eyes. I'm going to present the way SHOT went about recreating the internet from their perspective, from a corporate communication perspective, and also from our perspective. We're the guys that actually built the internet. So my name is David Wainwright. I'm the head of business development. I'm responsible for our portfolio or partners. I'm located in Frankfurt, but it doesn't seem to matter. The customers are everywhere. They're around the world these days. I've been with the company since 2006. We are a European IT consulting development house. We build basically anything our customers want on an enterprise Java stack. We're about 300 employees and have about a turnover of 25 million per year, or euros per year. But I don't want to speak too much about Pradina. Today we want to talk about SHOT. And SHOT is one of our best customers. You'll probably find out in the course of the next 30 minutes why they're such a good customer. But SHOT is a high-tech company. Most of you probably have products from SHOT, even if SHOT isn't directly marked on the product. Keen photographers and people making cinema videos probably use optics from SHOT. Carl Zeiss Jena is a company that belongs to SHOT, and Zeiss objectives or camera objectives are amongst some of the finest you can buy. But also in pharmaceutical industry, in industrial components, lighting, aviation, nano coatings for glass, and in aviation industry also. In the electronic industry, glass fiber, lighting components in the automotive. People that like cooking probably have one of these cooking tops from SHOT Saran, cooking tops. They're a product from SHOT. And also in the life sciences, in cosmetic industry, microscopes, again, optics. So what we can see here is SHOT is a high-tech company. They started off making glass, and glass back in the old days was a hot and dirty job. SHOT still exists as a name, as a brand name on glassware, so wine glasses, but wine glasses are no longer made by SHOT. SHOT is really in the high-tech sectors, belongs in the high-tech sector. So SHOT is reliant on innovation, and we know that innovation occurs at the weirdest times, in the weirdest places, and in the mind of any of your employees. So it's very, very important to harness the ideas and capture these ideas in some way or other. And that was one of the motivation or the motivating factors behind the intranet. So SHOT is much bigger than Pradina. They have a turnover almost 2 billion euros per year. They have over 15,000 employees, and what's most important to talk about here is that they're distributed in 35 countries. And if we look at the map, it's a fairly good distribution. It's not just that 90% is in Germany and 10% is somewhere else. It's a fairly good distribution of turnover and also employees around the world. So obviously, there is a high demand or a very big need to communicate effectively and to harness ideas and basically improve the efficiency of the company through good communication. So this was all before we had met SHOT. So what you see here in this graphic is probably nothing new to this audience. What's clear and what you've heard 1,000 times is the number of manual workers is decreasing rapidly over time. For SHOT did at one time have a lot of manual workers, glass ovens, big, hot, and dirty things. It's becoming highly automated. The degree of technical innovation is increasing, and correspondingly, the amount of people or service workers needing access to information or looking for information is increasing proportionately. And SHOT did a lot of homework. They went about speaking to all of their employees, creating interviews or having interviews. I can't see you obviously can't read all of this, but this comment here said if someone needed to replace me for 2 weeks, they wouldn't be able to do it. The one down here said, I know there's massive amounts of information available in the company, but I have no way to find out where this information is. This one here says, I know there's a lot of projects going on at SHOT worldwide, global projects that are going on right in front of my face, but I have no way to find out anything about them. And the one down here, I think, says, I have a lot of information to offer, but I've got no platform on which I can offer my information. So there's plenty of people out there within the company that have information and want to share this information. But up until this time, this was around about 2012, there was no platform by SHOT which enabled the employees to share their information. So SHOT were motivated by a need to address the future. As we've seen, SHOT is a high-tech company. SHOT is reliant on novel ideas. And SHOT was basically faced with the situation, either they stay where they are. They had an intranet. It was a red dot-based intranet. It was unidirectional. It was one of these corporate intranets where a team of people basically created the content and published that content, and there was no way that anyone else was able to, or any of the employees were able to participate, or to develop themselves further, to utilize the latest technical developments, involve the employees, make every employee to an author, and also to address current and future business needs. It was about ticking the box, technical housekeeping, business effectivity, but also about cultural correctness and allowing the employees to participate in the company to a much greater extent than was previously available or possible. So I think everyone probably knows this type of scenario, and this was one of the key use cases behind the internet. So if we have someone here that wants to know something about medical devices in Vietnam, and we have 35,000 people around the world, there's probably someone out there in Asia and Southeast Asia that can answer that question or supply that information. Or we have someone here that's offering information about employer branding, and there's also most likely other people in the organization just waiting for that information or looking for that information. And if we could create this type of situation where anyone can find an expert within the company, then we can greatly increase the efficiency of the company. And basically the motto of this whole project, if SHOT knew what SHOT does know. So it's patently aware that the amount of information within the company is much greater than the availability of information. There are multiple studies that actually do suggest that 80% of the information within a company, of the corporate know-how, actually is implicit knowledge. It's within the head. So if we ask you a question, you'll probably be able to answer that question, but you probably weren't aware that you could answer that question. That's implicit knowledge as compared to explicit knowledge, the amount of knowledge, about 20%, that is actually written down in some sort of written form, so documents, PDFs, Word files, Excel files, wikis, all that information that is explicit. But 80% is implicit. So SHOT actually went to the extent of employing several universities It was long before we actually came to the project, to do multiple types of studies to find out how an intranet for short should actually look like. And we were very lucky, from our perspective as a service provider, this project was actually driven by corporate marketing and corporate IT. And these are the best types of projects to be involved in if you're a service provider. You don't want to be involved in just a corporate IT project, or in a project that's just being run by corporate IT, because the marketing department doesn't want anything to do with it. And if you're involved in a project that's just run by corporate marketing, then the IT guys don't want to have anything to do with running the system. So we had an ideal situation. Everyone was on board, management was on board, and they were patently aware of the fact that they had to work together. Because we're not talking about a technical solution. Of course, there is a technical solution behind it, but to get this thing to work, we need cultural change. We need the management to stand up and speak to the workforce, encourage the workforce, and allow them to use work time to actively participate in a social intranet. So you don't have to read all of this, but several universities went to work on finding out which were the major use cases, the main use cases that modern intranet needs. And in 3 domains, I just want to highlight a few points. They picked out person-to-person communication, also explicit documents and communication, but also this was 2011, 2012, so the height of the Web 2.0 phase or hype phase, was the absolute Web 2.0. We're all going this direction. We're all going to be social communicators within the next 2 years. In Germany, at least, 2011, 2012, this was the absolute peak of this movement. So, of course, messaging is a very large factor in this internet solution, as we just saw in this previous network diagram. Being able to find experts and being able to locate information within the internet is one of the key features. So, don't read that, please. Before we even got to the project, they already had a non-technical business definition of all of the stuff that was supposed to go into this internet. And it's huge. Right? It's massive. They had, I'll talk about migration in a minute. We migrated 35,000 contents from an old internet solution into the new one. But this is just a huge amount of information. Worldwide search, and news are obviously 2 topics that go right through the internet. Mobile access is also a topic that goes right through the internet. It was 2012. It took a while to get a good mobile access actually implemented. It does exist now. I'll show it to you. But an awful lot of applications and information was basically going to be the place for information by SHOT. And SHOT then went about started looking at what IT solutions or what products they actually had in-house, and to try and find a solution. Do we already have it? Do we already have a software that can be the technical basis for the new intranet? And they had multiple solutions or multiple different types of platforms that already existed within the company. The only one that could have possibly been a candidate was SharePoint. I know there's also several other SharePoint providers here. But I'll come back to that topic of SharePoint. But this was the height of the Web 2.0 revolution, and it was considered that SharePoint wasn't really the platform that it should be, mainly because of the integrative capabilities, but also come back to that. And SHOT decided to look for something completely new. Consider SharePoint, yes, but look for alternatives. And when looking at alternatives, try and get rid of as many of these other solutions as possible. So getting rid of solutions was also one of the primary objectives. So SHOT examined the whole market. I think they looked at something like 78 different products. There were 4 that were put on a short list. That was Jive, Liferay, Microsoft SharePoint, and IBM Connections. And for each of these 4 candidates, they actually did a paid proof of concept. So this was more or less our first contact with the project. And they actually paid 4 companies to make 4 completely different proof of concepts. Okay, it wasn't billions of budgets they put into this proof of concept. They wanted to actually see each of these solutions running. Because up until that, they had basically done their public tender And they had an Excel sheet with thousands of questions. I spent absolutely days answering all of these questions. In this perspective, Livestream, we have Livestream as one of our partners. And yeah, does this feature really exist? Well, depends. You know, how are you looking at it? What does the company actually want to do with this feature? But we spent days filling this out. And SHOT really went to put an awful lot of effort and money into picking a technical solution that worked for them. And I want to stress the point because they actually came up with numbers here. And this is what the best solution for them out of their eyes. And they were very, very adamant about the fact that they didn't want to bend their processes around the software, but the software should be able to bend itself around SHOT. So they wanted a custom solution. I'm not going to read all of this. What they say about IBM, yeah, integration is good, or it can be difficult, but the infrastructure requirements are extremely high. SHOT already used SharePoint and had a bit of problem with customization, weren't quite so keen to integrate so many different systems with the SharePoint. It's not really enterprise open source. It does require specialized knowledge. Jive, at least back then, this is 2012, 2013, wasn't internationalized. And ShotNet is run in 8 different languages. That was one problem they had with Jive. And then finally, Livestream won by quite a distance. But again, this is out of this perspective and out of the eyes of SHOT. The main selling point was it's open source. It still costs money. It's a subscription-based enterprise open source product. But it's a platform, and it's highly integrative. And there's a relatively large amount of know-how available on the market regarding customization and consulting services. So they decided for Livestream. It was their decision based on the best product for their needs. If it was a different company, maybe this decision would have come to a different conclusion. And they then looked for a partner. Okay, we had done the public tender with Livestream for SHOT. And they were adamant about the fact that they don't want a standard out-of-the-box solution. This wasn't a white-labeled internet they wanted to just roll out, stick their name on, stick their logo on. It was really, they wanted their business processes here with a very different type of localization, a lot of individualization, a highly optimized search, because they have a lot of content, networking, social collaboration, and messaging. That was their focus points. We said, okay, we can do it in about 6 months. And it was a tough 6 months, because look at this. SHOT spent about 1.5 years evaluating, and we actually managed to roll out this intranet in 6 months. Because SHOT has a different financial year. It ended, I think, at the end of September. We started 6 months prior to that with a fairly large team. We did the complete migration and the complete technical implementation within 6 months. But that was phase 1. We've been working with SHOT and still are working with SHOT 5 years later. So we provided, what did we provide? It's important to say that ShotNet runs and is managed and is operated and is supported by Prodina. That means it is an internal system from SHOT, but it's hosted and managed on SHOT hardware in our own computer center. So we also did the complete system architecture, the requirements engineering. There was the conversion of the business requirements onto the Livestream platform, or how do you develop these business requirements in the Livestream framework, quality management, the integration of external systems, we'll talk about these in a second, adjustments and extensions of the Livestream, and of course, a lot of custom development. This is the system setup. I'm only going to say it's highly available. It has 3 tiers. It's fairly complex. Yeah, it runs by us. But it's a fairly big setup. It's the demands on the hardware are fairly high. So the integration, it's integrated with SAP HR. So a lot of the leading system is SAP by SHOT. It's then exported to Active Directory, and that's the basis for a single sign-on. So we have all of the employee information completely within the portal. SHOT also had worldwide, I think, about 5 different types of job markets, and it was the power of the integration platform that we're able to write an application for the internet, for the Livestream. It's just a Java portlet that integrates these 5 different job markets localized around the world into one job platform and offer some more features. For example, every employee can then subscribe to particular locations. It's a little difficult to see from the back, but you can say, okay, if I really want to go and if I want a job in La Jolla, I can subscribe to the La Jolla location, and as soon as a new job becomes available in La Jolla, I'll be automatically informed that job is there. Migrations, I said, we migrated the red dot intranet in its entirety, more or less, into the Liferay platform. There was about 35,000 contents, and many of those contents also were linked with the binary files, such as PDFs, as Word documents, in other systems and the document management systems. And we managed to get all of that migrated, including the metadata. That was also done by a custom Java program. But it was possible to completely do that and to deduplicate the information along the way. The other system we completely managed to completely get rid of was the old wikis. Shot had a large number of an awful lot of information in wikis, in MediaWiki, and it was fairly easy to migrate that into Liferay because Liferay has a wiki portlet that accepts the standard wiki, MediaWiki format. So it was fairly simple to do that. We could just export and re-import. For implementation, there were just an example of a few things. The deputy feature, that was very important to Shot, that every single person could offer a deputy or have a deputy person when they're on holiday, when they're sick. Being able to turn off email. So Shot was aware of the fact that such an intranet can spit out an awful lot of mail, that every employee should have the opportunity to turn that off. And just another really simple example, but has a very large effect, is anyone is an author in ShotNet, and a very easy way to create a page. So just create a portal page, one click. And something I can't show, but is really actually quite central to the portal, is the innovation application. We created an application for Shot called Shot Pipeline that allows any employee to add an idea to the portal and to have that idea rated, and the management then discusses the top-rated ideas. And there have, in the last 5 years, there have been several patents then registered from ideas that came through the Shot pipeline. But unfortunately, I can't show you that application because Shot invests a lot of money into it and doesn't want to have that shown in public. So what does it look like? This is 2014. It does look different today, but this was the brand new social internet in 2014 in edit mode. So you see all of these little icons here. They disappear when we turn edit mode off. But it's fairly easy, so 5 minutes, to create pages and create content. And anyone can create content, and anyone can comment on anything within the intranet. We scanned it, we just scroll down the page a bit. We have here world news, all entirely in English, and local news depending on the localization of the employee in their own language, and links to other parts of the portal. The mega menu. The ShotNet is large, there's an awful lot of content. We started off with an external design, digital media house that did the optics and the design. And it was a bit difficult because there's way too much here in the menu. This was on the way to the digital workplace. And it was too much. It was a little bit too difficult. So we're coming slowly into the lessons learned. We're running a bit short of time, so we'll skip over this. This is just one of the communities that has the task of creating maps for every different building within Shot. So the journey. So 2012, 2013 was as I just talked about, what product do we need, and a fairly short initial development period. And then the last years, continuous improvement. So we have a development operations team that is permanently there for the Shot customer. The number of people actively working on the project is variable. That's the beauty of a development operations team. When Shot needs more or has new features, the business wants a feature, we can easily scale up and scale down, but we keep the know-how, the customer know-how, and we keep the employees within one team so we can easily come back to that knowledge. That knowledge doesn't get lost. And 2017, major update. So after almost 5 years, it's time to refresh the way the portal looks. It's time to show that Shot's still innovating and finally address that's the aspect of mobile access. So about 6 weeks old now is the 2017 update. We migrated to the newest version of Liferay Digital Experience Platform. Yeah, the look and feel is a bit nicer, it's a bit more modern, it makes the development a bit easier, and you'll see in a few seconds it looks a lot nicer. Design update, we did design ourselves now. 5 years later, we also have an internal design team, 25 people that just do design, UX, UI. And you'll see it makes it much easier, much more cost-effective for the customer when we do our own design, better mobile support, and finally an integration strategy. The last couple of years, Shot spent putting an awful lot of time, money into writing custom applications for a portal, and slowly sort of waking up to the idea, okay, maybe the integration of external components would be a better idea. So this is the way Shot looks now with Liferay DXP and our design from our own design team. So if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see it's been cleaned up massively. Yeah? There's hot topics, my recent sites, and some real my recent sites. It's the one that each individual employee visited the last time. My apps. The news is still here. Here's the most important news. It's now a mashup of international and global news. Zoom out a little bit. We now have a sidebar menu that is much, much compacter, much cleaner. And the way that the information is being presented allows an overview of the information. It's much easier to access. So that sidebar is very easy to toggle on and off. It doesn't look like a portal anymore. It's much cleaner, modern design. The original design was, okay, this isn't a portal, this is our digital workplace. Now we're really going into making this modern, making 1 minute. I can do it. Okay. One really cool feature is now really simple, but brings a lot of value, is bookmarks. Anyone can bookmark anything in the portal. They have their own private area. Here we see the dashboard. Here I see everything I've been doing, what my colleagues have been doing, comments, all those types of social activities that everyone knows. Mobile, it's finally there. It's a responsive design. It's available for the employees over the internet, so anyone can use it in any browser. It's completely responsive. You can use the entire internet portal. The modality of the menu is just the same hamburger menu, and it's been slightly modified to make it easier to use on a mobile device. So, to continue our travel, we were here with Liferay DXP and wanted to talk about integration. So Shot does have a lot of SharePoint sites they use primarily for collaboration, so document collaboration. And to integrate them, we created a proper type of SharePoint connector. It's not a dirty iframe integration. It's really a proper connector with APIs, a RESTful API that allows, when we scroll down here, a really, really good integration of SharePoint sites and activities of SharePoint sites, and we can actually access the whole SharePoint API out of the Liferay. So we won an innovation award for that, but the journey is really the reward. It's a project that is continually running. It's never finished. And it's about identifying smaller goals and adjusting the internet to the goals and to the needs of the employees. So with that, I think I'll say thank you. Thanks for the interest. I think it's a really interesting project, and it's certainly been a great journey with Shot, and many thanks to the customer for allowing us to share this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And we'll take questions if there are any. And if not, just because, we have one. Great.
Hello, I'm Sarah Blackburn from Easy SharePoint. It's obviously been quite an expensive project. You've worked with the client for a long time. Yeah. How do they measure the return on investment?
That's very, very difficult. It's not a business automation project. We know, okay, when we automate this process, we can get rid of 300 employees. It's the believing in the employees that we can get more value from them. But I know there are many people out there that have arguments and say we can measure it, and there are KPIs for measuring it, but it's the belief in the leadership of SHOT that the value is there and that SHOT is reliant on innovation. And SHOT is one of the few companies that we know of that actually throw this much money at the corporate internet. It is a substantial invest, but it has been a success for SHOT because SHOT.net is really the central place for information at SHOT, and the employees understand it and live the intranet as such. And people do use the last 6 weeks and really had a good mobile access. People do sit in the evening and read the SHOT news while they're watching TV. So it seems to pay off for SHOT.
Hi, here.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of what you did to make search better, how you help the client with, I don't know, like probably a longer discussion, but just a couple of things that you did to optimize search?
Yeah. The search is faceted. Every employee can set their own tags, what they're really interested in. Each employee has a profile. We're able to match those profiles with the search parameters, and make sure, that the ranking of the search results is best matched to the profile of the employee. It was originally a Lucene Solr-based search. It is now an Elasticsearch, which seems to work even better.
Hi, my name is Kinara Hinder from Stora Enso. Hi.
Yeah.
So I have a question. You were having a 6-month migration period, and now you're having a huge design change. How has SHOT been working with user adoption and user engagement during this 6-month period?
During the initial 6 months?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, it's such a very short time to get people to kind of get used to a new type of internet.
It was a short time, but it was a time of massive activity. So SHOT Marketing was doing the internal marketing campaigns, sort of the usual things like video presentations, posters everywhere. The whole SHOT campus was covered in posters in the canteens. Everyone knew this new SHOT internet was coming. That was on the one side, and the migration and the technical implementation of the portal, that was basically our job. So it was 6 months of hyperactivity.
But how, I mean, there's so many users, right? They have their sites, they have their pages, you're going to transfer them. That's a lot of people to engage during this short time. So that's kind of what I'm interested in hearing, that how did they move in such a short time and get everyone with them, basically?
Okay, so the whole thing was done in phases. The first 6 months was the phase one. It was the migration of the old intranet, and basically all of this news, global news profile and social networking activities, and the collaboration sites were set up in the year following that, so slowly up one by one afterwards. So we had a longer period. The 6 months was just the initial.
Performance indicators for improving the intranet? Where have you reached? How do you do that on a regular basis?
We don't have any hard KPIs that are numbers based. It's all feel, it's all about feedback. The SHOT internal marketing does a lot of internal marketing, getting user feedback. And we also have by Prodina internally a UX and UI group that does ergonomic studies and design studies and makes continual suggestions, what we could change, what we could improve. But we don't have in any part of SHOT.net any hard numbers as far as I'm aware of that measure success. Well, of course we have access numbers, what's being read, what's being used, how many people on the system, but not, anything that will go in the direction of ROI. Okay?
Well, thank you, David. A great presentation. Let's thank David.
Thank you.
So our next speaker has come from the IMF, which is actually an interesting organization because it's, I'd say, a bunch of highly skilled economists who are really trained in researching in academia, and how do you actually build an intranet that is useful for such for such a crowd. So next speaker is Nirseen Farhan from the IMF. Let's welcome Nirseen. And given that this morning started really early for some of us, I see we've kind of started, pretty much the group is now assembled. I forgot to kick off the fun fact.
Oh, that's
part.
not fair. That's not fair.
But since Ross has come back, you'll be able to fill in us on what your fun fact is after Nirseen. You'll have some time to think about it. So thank you, Nirseen.
If you thought that Mikhail's name was difficult, mine is Nisreen Farhan. I'm the Chief of Internal Communications at the International Monetary Fund. A quick show of hands, anyone knows what the IMF does? Okay, pretty good. So, my presentation will focus on the interplay between internal communications at the IMF and external communication. I'll start very quickly with an overview of the IMF, since many of you know what we do, and then I'll take you through our journey of communications. It's a very interesting journey that both affects internal and external, and then I'll quickly go through our internal communication tools, and I will touch upon our next steps in digital workplace. So the IMF. The IMF is a global institution. We have membership of 189 countries. Anyone knows how many countries there are in the world? 195. So we're practically global. We have only six countries that are not our members. These are just countries. So what do we do? Sorry. What do we do at the IMF? There's 189 countries, as I said. Our board of directors has 24 chairs representing 189 countries. So basically, we are governed by all of you in the room. Any one of you here, through their governments, decides what we do for a living. Very, very complicated in so many ways. Our workforce is made up of 2,800 staff. They come from 148, or about 150 countries. The goal of the board and our HR is to actually reach 189 countries. So we also have a very diverse internal staff. And that's very important for our internal communication as well as our external communication. So what do we do for a living? As you had said, we are a bunch of economists. The 2,800 are mainly economists. We are specialists, macroeconomists, but we also have tax specialists, financial market specialists. So we're very, very academic in what we do. And we travel to the 189 countries. What do we do for a living? What is our mandate? Our managing director, Christine Lagarde, had said that our key mandate is to promote global economic and financial stability. What does that mean? How do we do that? We do three main things. We do an annual economic health check for the 189 countries. Our economists travel to each country. We do an economic report that spans from your economy, GDP, inflation, the financial sector, your labor market, and it's published. So it's a public good. You want to know about any country's economic health, just go on the imf.org, you'll find that report. Second thing that we do is we're firefighters. We lend to countries who have economic, financial, banking crises, emergencies, whether it's environmental or otherwise. So we give them money, we put conditionality, and for low-income countries, we don't charge interest. We've lent to advanced economies from Greece to emerging markets to low-income countries. The third thing that we do, which is a public good, is capacity building. We help institutions in our member countries develop their tax administration. We help central banks start a banking supervision center. So why is this all important? Let me bring it back to communication. The IMF has gone through a really interesting journey of communications, and that's external, but also reflects on the internal. From 1944, year of our inception, through the 90s, we were based on secrecy. Ross was telling you that in the financial sector, we're all secret. Try us. We're privy to information from central banks and financial sectors, so we were definitely based on secrecy. What does secrecy mean up to the 1990s? Basically, we didn't publish anything, and our main audience was our governments, our membership. From the late 90s to 2007, and I'm marking 2007 as the year before the crisis, we moved to transparency. What does that mean? We published everything, but that's it. We put it out there for you to figure out the message, for the stakeholders, for NGOs to figure out what the main message is. So you can see how many people saw it in their own eyes. We didn't actually move the messages. Anyone knows the one thing in common between secrecy and transparency? There's no active communication in either of them. So we've evolved. Where are we now? From 2007, 2008 onwards, communication has become a policy tool at the IMF. We publish, we communicate. We communicate in traditional media, digital, and social. All the tools. We're out there, we shape the messages. So while we've evolved and are still evolving, the world of communication around us has also evolved, internally as well as externally. According to Reuters, you can see older people still depend on the traditional TV media, but our younger generation, again, whether it's internal or external, use social media as their main source of news. And you've seen in the world that's going around us how this is actually evolving even faster. So while communication has evolved, the world that matters most to the IMF, remember we're global, has also changed. So there's a backlash against globalization, whether it's in Europe, on this side of the pond, or in the US. There's a backlash against experts, who we are. So it's a battle of how we communicate and what we put out there and how easy it is reachable. So why does it all matter for us? Why does this matter to us internally and externally? Let me tell you, by using some examples, how internal and external communication interplay. Our conversations outside the building, external communication, are shaping our conversations and our community inside the building, internal communication. But the opposite is also true. What we communicate, to have a good external communication, I believe very, very strongly, it does not work without an even better internal communication strategy. Why? Mikhail was saying about how your staff are your ambassadors. In an institution like the IMF, where every economist goes abroad, they need to be our ambassadors because the world has changed, like I was saying. An economist that goes to Kenya, to Sri Lanka, the governments in Kenya and Sri Lanka and Nigeria and the Middle East, they are no longer just interested in what happens in their own countries. You go to Nigeria, to Kenya, and the first question they ask you, how quick is China growing? The other question they ask you, how is the impact of Trump tax policies and Trump financial sector policies affecting the rest of the world? So our economists are now suddenly in a position where they have to know about the country they're working on, but they also have to know the fund's policy advice to China, to the US, to the UK, given Brexit. So if we don't teach them all of this, how are they going to communicate it out there? This is very, very important for us internally. So like I said, external communications shape internal, but internal, it shapes external as well. And this is a very important concept for us. So I'm going to illustrate with 3 examples. Some external headlines some of you may have seen. The first one, in 2007, our employees woke up early morning with a headline that our managing director, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, has been detained at New York airport accused of sexual attack. This is our reputation, externally and internally, and our staff woke up to this. Imagine what internal communication would look like there. 2 years down the line, our credibility was on the line. Ooh, sorry. In 2013, again, our staff woke up to news that the IMF admitted to its mistakes in dealing with the Greece economic crisis. Now, mind you, this was a report that we produced, but the headline was, the IMF admitted to its mistakes. Again, imagine how this affects the morale and the credibility of what we do for a living, policy advice. The third headline, which I think is actually the easiest we had to deal with, just in the summer of 2017, a couple of months ago, our managing director, Christine Lagarde, was quoted in the news for saying that IMF headquarters will move to China. Now, internally, we actually understood what that means, because the IMF represents the global economy, and the biggest country hosts our headquarters. So at the moment, we're hosted in the US, and along the line, if China becomes the biggest country, we have to move there. So our staff understood the third one a lot more than the outside world did. But still, we wake up to 3 pieces of news. Each one of them deserves a different internal communication strategy. Both are shaping each other. So, how do we do it? Our internal communication strategy, I'm going to give you a bird's eye view here. And if anybody would like some details, I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. So our internal communication strategy has 3 main pillars. First is employee engagement. This is, like I was telling you, it's all about ambassadors. It's all about knowledge exchange and being able to share information between each other, staff as our ambassadors. The second one is that our internal communication function, communication at the IMF is centralized. So our internal communication function is also to help our internal stakeholders communicate. So we communicate for HR, we communicate for IT, we communicate for other departments, the fiscal, monetary, whoever wants to communicate, we help them, we facilitate their messages internally. And the third is what Ross was talking about, the corporate intranet, our corporate messages. We want to say something about countries, about Greece, policies, our new policy on corruption and governance, and messages from our management. So to achieve these objectives, I'm sure you all have the same tools. We have the intranet, which is our main tool of communication alongside email. Again, we are mostly based in DC, so we have a lot of meetings, person to person, email, and then we have the intranet. But more and more, the intranet is everybody's favorite child. More and more, we're trying to tell our stakeholders, reminding ourselves to mind the rest of the family. So we actually are trying to use other tools, social engagement. We use a very simple FOCO, which is a photo sharing. We try to do workplace social media, didn't quite work with economists because they're busy writing papers and meeting each other. We do use a lot of digital media, so we have a lot of TVs around the fund. We're using a lot more video. We actually use a lot more video now. Our videos have moved. I was talking to you earlier. Our videos have moved from a 5-minute talking head videos to 30-second, 1-minute videos, interactive. So we're using these not just for the external audience, also for the internal audience. As you can see, we have a few, some of them are used more than others, town halls, events, emails are still very, very strong. So we also put a lot of emphasis on our audience. We're trying to basically teach ourselves, but also teach our stakeholders to stop coming to us just for the intranet. So we basically see who our audience is. Do we want a message that is broad? Is it a call for action? If it is, then we have what we call a fund all email. It's sent to everybody. We have a town hall with management. If it's something narrower, again, why put it on the intranet? Intranet is for wide audiences. Make it exactly tooled for the level of audience that you're trying to reach. And we have impact analysis, like everybody else. We do data analytics. We see usage, demographics, and we align and calibrate our content strategy accordingly. So what's next for us? We're trying to actually move into something more digitalized, more collaborative, again, all in the hope of making our staff our own ambassadors. So the next step is an integrated, digitalized approach. Here, we're looking for basically a platform that provides a knowledge exchange where documents are freely available. Remember the secrecy I started with? We have silos. I work on something, I'm keeping it for my team. But what we really are trying to do is, if you are working on one country, that report internally has to be available for others as well, because every country is interconnected. And cross-country analysis is really, really important. And that's mandated from the top of our management all the way down to staff. And to do that, better management, we need better search, we need document management. We're also working on people skills. So again, like I said, we have a lot of economists and a lot of specialists, but nobody knows who's who. Nobody knows who works on crisis countries, who worked on conflict. So we're trying to also, who wrote papers on what, so that we don't repeat our work. So we're also trying, through a digitalized approach, trying to do a better people finder and skill finder so that we can easily tap into each other's expertise. All this, as I said, is for our staff to become our ambassadors, but also to serve our members properly. Like I was telling you, countries are now asking us for information about other countries in their neighborhood and globally. So I'm going to show you something that we're working on. It's still a work in progress. Some of you might have seen this. So the basis of our integrated approach is a collaboration workplace for the individual or a team. Here you can find all the data you want, your next cycle of travel. This is integrated, like I said, with document management and a very good search engine, or Achilles heel at the fund. We also have the people profile that I talked about. All of this is integrated with knowledge sites. Like I said, there's financial sector issues. We're working on gender, inequality. All of this is available and integrated in your workplace. It's also your management has a different look than your team does because we are reviewed and double reviewed. So it's important for management to know what's going on. And then this is all integrated into our country pages, 189 countries, and our imf.org website. This is still a design phase, so we're learning, and we are trying to see what our own economists and staff are looking for. But the important thing to highlight here is that it has to be integrated, but at the same time individualized. We want to be able to offer staff the chance to be our ambassadors by giving them what they need, whether it's people finding or document finding, wherever they are, if they're in headquarters in Washington, D.C., or traveling abroad, and whenever they want it. And by that, I mean if they want it online or offline, and then on their mobiles. And the important thing, like I said, is moving from the one to the whole. It's integrated. I guess I'll stop here and leave you with some food for thought of what the challenges that we're facing are, which is basically balancing innovation and communication with change management. It's not easy to move from something that you're siloed into something that's more open. And by the time we do that, technology has moved and left us behind. So how do you do it quickly? It's very interesting to see that you've moved, Schultz has moved in 6 months. So, questions? Thank you very much for listening. Now that's the chance I disappear.
By the way, I forgot to mention that you're also a recovering economist yourself. So I think that's,
yes.
Which is, I think, critical for actually building trust for such a ambitious internal communication project. I was curious because you showed that external news. How did it actually appear internally in the intranet?
So actually, the news about DSK was first because we were surprised. So we were taken by surprise. So it was announced to staff by a fundall. We sent an email early in the morning confirming what we know, which is what we heard as well, and confirming that we are working with the US authorities to find out more. So we basically confessed, we know as much as you know, nothing. And then from there on, it kept on. The more we knew, the more we could share. And then it ended up, I think, in a process of 6 months where DSK came back to the IMF, apologized to staff, and we moved on. So that was how we did it.
Hi, so my name is Dev, and I work for Lobazan, which is a big biotechnology company. Oh, thank you. My name's Dev. I work for Novozymes. It's a biotech company, and I actually work in corporate communication where we have a sort of seamless external-internal flow of information. And I'm wondering that with the headlines you showed us and the fact that you've moved towards a new kind of communications structure, are you now able to stay more on message when your leaders go out into the world? Is that helping?
You mean more message internally as well as externally?
Yeah, so for example, the fact that everybody knows about that, that's a possibility that you could have a headquarters in Beijing, but it's absolutely no surprise when it is said at a press conference.
Yes and no. I mean, it's still a little bit of a surprise. We have people who have original thinking. We've got a lot of PhDs, and they think what they think. So we have consistency of messages at big events, at our annual meetings. We basically organize our thoughts, and we all go in one big message. But also, our managing director can say what she actually believes in, and that's really important. Because originality of thought and thinking is really important. And then we're agile. We have to immediately then say, oh yes, this reflects that policy. Or it's never been really that somebody has said something that's completely off, especially in messaging, because we are more and more consistent internally and externally. But we're still, researchers. We're academics.
Can I ask one more question? Yeah, very quickly. You said that, between transparency and secrecy that there was almost no difference. But now that you are actually using communications as a policy tool, are you more trustworthy as an organization?
That's a very good question. Greece showed us that communication does not substitute for good policy advice. So yes, indeed, we're communicating, but the bottom line is our policy advice still has to be really rigorous, and it wasn't in Greece.
Do you run your intranet centralized?
So again, very interesting question. We have an editorial calendar that looks 3 months ahead. We're like a newspaper. And what we do is we bring up our own original work consistent with external messaging. So if there's a paper that's going out that we need to communicate to our staff, we do that. But also we get input from all our departments, all our staff, and they come into our messaging, whether it's a people story, it's a policy story. So it's centralized, but it's also input from the whole community. Okay.
Well, Ross promised me that if you share your fun fact, he will share his.
Well, I'm an avid whitewater kayaker and a rower as well. So.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Nisreen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, Ross, you have no choice.
So I wrote it down. I'm a dedicated Pokemon Go player. Originally started as an exploration into location-based technology for, you walk near a Wells Fargo branch and something happens. But now my 6- and 8-year-old play, and they're almost going to catch up to me.
Well, that's actually interesting. I'll tell you a secret. My kids, when I travel all around the world, they used to ask me to get gifts for them. And when they grew up, they stopped asking for it. My young one used to ask me to get the unique Pokemons that you can't get anywhere else. There are those in Australia, there are those in Japan. But actually, I don't know, it kind of stopped recently, so.
I caught a Mr. Mime here in London, so I'm happy.
Mr. Mime. Well, our next speaker, and I love the topic here about should we redefine the intranet and should we actually call it something different? Our next speaker is from Jive, Darren Phillips, who's a Senior Director of EMEA Solution Consulting. Let's welcome Darren. Don't forget your fun fact.
I've got to try and make one up now. So good morning. Welcome to Intranet Reloaded. My name is Darren Phillips. I work for Jive Software. I'm part of the solution consulting team. My work passion is disruptive and emerging technologies. And by disruptive, I mean those types of technologies that bring new capabilities that change the world around us. And some people would call me a technologist, which I think is a modern version of the word geek. But that's okay because I've been called a lot worse, and on those occasions where people tell me I don't know what day it is, I like to think I'm progressing to futurist. So I need to start with a confession, and that when my very nice manager, I'm seeing if he's in the room and he's not, when he volunteered me to stand up in front of everybody and present at the Internet Reloaded, I become painfully aware it's been many years since I've actually implemented an intranet. And the first thing I had to do was go and Google what the latest definition of an intranet was. And that led me to this topic. Does the definition of an intranet need updating? Because the first result I saw was on Wikipedia. And as you can see from the screenshot, Wikipedia says it needs updating, so then it must be true. Because who's ever heard of a wiki page that doesn't need updating? But joking aside, a couple of the concepts in the description really caught my eye. One was this no external access, communication and collaboration, a single point of access to internal and external resources, and its organisational staff. And then when I looked at the date, since this term's been around 1994, it kind of made sense to me why these terms weren't fitting my understanding of a modern day intranet. Because if I look back over the last 10 years, technology has changed at such a rapid rate that it's disrupted the business models that we work in every day, let alone the last 20. So I started to ponder this question, and recently I took a work trip to Vancouver, and I was sitting on the flight thinking about the definition of intranets, and it reminded me of a story from when I was a young boy. Because at that age, there was two things that I wanted to be. One is that I wanted to be Batman, which unfortunately is probably the only thing I'll ever have in common with Ben Affleck. The second was that I wanted to be an explorer. I wanted to discover new countries, and I was fascinated by stories of the early pioneers of North America, and that not only did they land on the East Coast, but they travelled west, right across the country at an alarmingly rapid rate until they hit the Rocky Mountains and their progress stopped. And it wasn't for another 100 years that Alexander Mackenzie finally got to the top of the Rockies and saw the West Coast for the first time and would map the end-to-end coastal route across the country. And that resonated throughout my career when I come across challenges that I had to overcome and so on and so forth. But as I thought about this definition question, that story changed. And I realized that one of the values that we see today is from the work that the early pioneers have put in before us in building capabilities. Because I was now flying across the coast in 6 hours from east to west, and I could probably drive it in a week. And that was because those early pioneers, they come off of the beach, they set a path, they built wagon trails, they built roads, railways, frontier outbacks, ranches, cities, and so on in states, and even things like cars, trains, planes, spaceships, and the technologies that we work in today. All of those built capabilities, and people built on those capabilities to take things forward. So I started to think about going back to 1994, when the definition of the intranet first came out, and what had changed, and what the key capabilities that we experience the benefits of today. And at Jive, we use this capability maturity curve. So let's start with the static intranet. We all remember those, full of loads of documents and the types of web pages that are so hard to edit, you needed to be Neo of the Matrix to effect any change in them. They had too much information, most of it was irrelevant, and it was difficult to use. And searching them was like doing the lottery. You participated, you already knew the outcome, but you like to live in hope. And if you're at this conference today because your company still has one of those, then this is one of the few places you can lean across and hug the person next to you, because we all felt your pain at some stage. But the capabilities that we developed when we started to overcome, or tried to overcome, all of that information, is that we looked at business classification systems, metadata, structures, and so on and so forth. But we quickly realized that the information that we wanted, the real expertise was in people's heads. So we started to look at social networks, crowdsourcing, microblogging, participating in communities, trying to tap into those expertise networks that people had. And to the point where social became a word that used to frighten C-level executives who wanted to implement a collaboration tool for people who didn't collaborate, but for some reason, if it was social collaboration, the ones that weren't collaborating would collaborate even less. So we started to change the names and the terms, but where these two capabilities come together and where we see a lot of value today is really around the interactive intranet. And in there, you get the power of uniting the crowd. You get semantic and contextual information because it understands more about your network and the topics you're interested in. A combination of expertise and information, and really good functionality around UI, UXs and things like video streaming, but they're tactical things. The real capability of an interactive intranet is when you've been able to harness that collective knowledge and experience from large groups of people and information. Because that's the real value, that harness collective intelligence. And where that really provides a lot of benefit for you, where companies are really successful, is where they take that harness value and they can apply it to the way that an individual works on these day-to-day activities along his business processes. And that's when you start to get the enterprise work hub. Because all business processes and process steps have collaborative activities around them. And if you can tap into that wealth of information that you've got, then by default your collaboration flows will become more seamless and your processes will start to accelerate. And it's at that point, at the work hub, people start to look around, integrating them with different applications and pulling them in from different process points. Now, a natural consequence of working on processes in today's corporate world is that those traditional boundaries are disappearing. Many of your processes include outside people, external agencies, customers, partners, supply chain, innovation groups. All of these require you to move across internal and external boundaries as fundamental parts of your process and parts of your business. So that's an important capability that people developed as part of these borderless communities. And now ecosystems. This is where I spend a lot of my time. Ecosystems are communities of companies. If I work with automotive companies, for example, their market's worth 800 billion, but if they work and build alliances with the markets around them, retail, insurance, finance, then their market's worth 2 trillion. So more and more companies are starting to build alliances that are communities of companies rather than communities of people. And within these ecosystems, collaboration is no longer just between people. You start to see collaboration but with the outside world, with data, with things, whether it be a connected car, a smart building, a smart city, a health device or wearable. Collaboration borders are changing, and they now include collaboration between people, data, and things. So I thought I'd give an example of one of these that we work with in Jive, and just to show some of the changes and the capabilities they have. Heli Offshore is an alliance that works on safety within the aircraft industry, and it has 100 companies or more using a single Jive platform. And they take data from things. It can be from weather, it can be from planes, it can be from lots of sources. But they work on best practices, learning, training. And the focus of that ecosystem is to save lives. Now, because an ecosystem is the collective capability of all of the ones that come before it, as soon as you change focus, it's able to do incredible things. So recently, we started to look at the supply chain. And what we found is that when an aircraft lands, an aircraft communicates lots of data about the flight. Some of it is fuel efficiency, but you'll be surprised that there's an alarming amount of sensors and faults that go off on an everyday flight. And when the plane lands, it produces a document and it says, this is the sensor that went off, this is the fault, this is the part that needs replacing, and this is who should replace the part. And then it posts it into this ecosystem, and these companies start to collaborate along their supply chain to get that done. And that's because throughout that ecosystem, the capabilities they're leveraging from are all the ones that come before we saw on the maturity curve. Collaboration, not just between people, but between companies. Internal and external processes. So when I look at the amount of change from where we was at the beginning of that curve to where we are today, things have changed drastically, not just from technologies, but also on the business models and the business strategies that we work with. So from a technologies perspective, I would say, or at least suggest, that certainly the definition of an intranet needs updating, and probably Wikipedia is right. You could even say that intranet on its own is really just a step in the maturity curve as you build these capabilities within your companies. As a pioneer, I would really question why you would stop at intranet. It would be like landing on that East Coast and staying on the beach and not looking further. And I would suggest that you don't implement an intranet, but you build capabilities. So my last piece of advice really is be brave, be pioneers, or alternatively, if you get the opportunity that I didn't, be Batman. Thank you.
By the way, I started updating the Wikipedia definition as we're talking, so hopefully we have an updated definition and you guys can collaborate as well. Thanks for such a great presentation. Any questions?
Perfect.
Well, we're the only ones standing between everyone and a breakfast break, so we're going to break for about 20 minutes, I think, for the break. Well, I know that Jeff wants a long breakfast. And you've been very quiet, Jeff, so thank you. But after breakfast, we'll hear more from Jeff. So we're going to break now for about 20 minutes and then come back here to the main hall. Thank you, everyone. So welcome back, and we'll get started in 1 minute as people are stepping back in. So welcome back, everybody, from the break, and we're going to get started with our second out of 4 or 5 parts of the day today. We have a long day ahead of us, so we need to get very caffeinated in each of the breaks. So our next speakers are from Beiersdorf, and I'm glad to welcome Julian and Ivan, who combine, on the one hand, the communication side and the solution IT side. They will share what is the secret to great collaboration among teams, as well as their journey for a social collaboration within the company. So don't forget your fun fact.
Yes, no problem.
Welcome our next speakers.
So good morning, everybody. So my fun fact is I love cooking, and I participated in the German TV cooking show. And this is where I met my wife. So a very nice story, and this is my fun fact.
Yeah, good morning everybody from my side as well. My fun fact is that Julian asked me a couple of months before if I want to join him on a conference in London. He said he has an extra ticket. And I said, yes, of course, I would join you. A couple of weeks later, we booked our flights, and this was when he said, by the way, we are presenting. And I said, thank you. And now we're here.
So hello again, my name is Julian. I am a corporate communications manager at Beiersdorf, and I'm responsible I'm the project lead, the business project lead for our social collaboration platform, Blue Planet. And yeah.
Yeah, my name is Ivan Birkic. I'm with Beiersdorf since 2012. I work in a department that is called Global Office Applications, which is located in IT. And yeah, I'm responsible for our whole collaboration and communication environment from an application and infrastructure perspective. And yeah, today we will talk about our collaboration and communication journey at Beiersdorf. We will especially talk about how we did change engagement and communication during a release upgrade of our collaboration platform. And then in the end, we will talk as well about the topic, how we want to consider to go into the cloud, how do we want to introduce Office 365 in our company.
All right, so who knows Beiersdorf? Please, hands up. Okay, it's not that bad, you can say. But if I show you some brands, I guess you definitely all know Beiersdorf. For example, our most famous brand is Nivea. Yeah, I think Nivea is well known here. And you can say we are the inventor of modern skincare. We are founded 1882 in Hamburg, and we are DAX listed in the German stock exchange since 2008. And our core brands are Nivea, Eucerin, Hansaplast, and La Prairie, and we have about over 17,000 employees worldwide in more than 160 countries. So let's have a look at our collaboration journey at Beiersdorf. I hand over to Ivan.
Thanks. So what you see here is our communication and collaboration journey for the past decades. At the top you see our collaboration journey, at the bottom you see our communication journey. In terms of digital collaboration, it started all in 2008, where we introduced SharePoint 2007. And we gave all our functions that had a demand for digital collaboration, we gave them a SharePoint web application. And it turned out 2 years later that almost all functions had a need for digital collaboration. Then in 2012, we said, okay, enough is enough with those silos. We need to bring everything together under one roof. We need to merge them. And we came up with a brand, and we called it
Blue Planet. Everything at Beiersdorf is blue, and that's why Blue Planet fits perfectly for us.
But not the people are blue, so we are very happy to it.
But our blood is blue, yeah. Yeah, and we did that with SharePoint 2010 and with a social add-in component. At that time, it was called NewsGator by Ceterion. It gave us the possibility to use a newsfeed inside our collaboration environment. It also gave us the capability to follow sites. Then in 2015, we decided to go with the next SharePoint release. So we did a release upgrade of our platform from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013. We throw our NewsGator component out because SharePoint 2013 was or had a newsfeed and the capability of following sites out of the box. If you take a look at the bottom on our communication roadmap, I think we had our first intranet in 1998. And we had a couple of relaunches at that time. And today our intranet is called BlueNet, so again blue. And we have already some integrations from our collaboration platform, so from Blue Planet into the BlueNet. So for instance, we are showing our newsfeed in our intranet. Yeah, and in the next year, we will introduce Office 365, and we bring those topics really technically as well together. We already brought them together when it comes to how do we talk about content, but now we will merge them as well technically. But before we talk about really our use case that we have on Blue Planet, before we talk about Office 365, we want to tell you why business commitment is so important for us and why it's really crucial for our journey as well at Beiersdorf. So back in 2008, where we had all those silos, all those individual platforms, we really were facing an administrative overhead. And we had always to do multiple deployments on multiple systems, and each platform really looked differently. And those guys who had to work cross-functionally were really the poorest because they had always a different interface, who didn't know who were the owners of each single platform, and yeah, we kind of need to provide a solution for it. And in 2008, the IT was the initiator and also the lead for this topic, for digital collaboration. Same in 2012, when we launched Blue Planet at the first time, initiator and lead was still the IT. And in the end, it was still seen as an IT tool. A business colleague of mine at this time said, it's still a tool from nerds for nerds. I thought it's a little bit harsh, but sometimes he was really right, yeah. Yeah, and what was missing was as well that we didn't have a holistic change in communication approach, because this is the platform that we launched globally for all our affiliates, for all our employees at Beiersdorf. And to be honest, in SharePoint 2010, the usability was really medium, so it wasn't really intuitive and easy to use, as well for me as an IT guy. Yeah, and the common platform roadmap was missing. And that's why we decided, with the relaunch of Blue Planet, with the move towards SharePoint 2013, to transfer the business ownership from IT to corporate communication, so that we have a double lead from that point of time.
And we two are the project leads, so I'm from business side and Ivan is from IT side. And now we have clear responsibilities, and it's really important. And we, of course, from communication side, did a whole new engagement and communication concept, which I will show you in a minute. And what is really important all the time in engagement is we need the user focus. Yeah? So the user needs to be in the focus, and this was missing, and this is something we totally changed 2 years ago. And so I can show you now.
I think there's one slide.
Okay, sorry.
Again, how our collaboration solution looks today. So this is Blue Planet as we use it today. This is the starting page separated into 3 zones. On the left-hand side, you see your picture, which should suggest this is a personal collaboration space. In the middle, you see the newsfeed. On the right-hand side, you see the sites that you are following. And we also added the capability that you can add your own links, and we provide also corporate links that you can choose from a catalog. And we divided our platform basically into 5 use cases. We divided it into departments, projects, knowledge, and communities, and as well the extranet for our external collaboration with suppliers and agencies, and so on and so on.
Yeah, we will focus a little bit on how our exact use cases look like in the end of our presentation. Now we'll hand over to Julian, who will show us how we did change and engagement and communication during this release upgrade.
So many people say if they see this, okay, this looks a little bit like Facebook. I know Facebook is also here, but we can tell you our blue is much older than Facebook's blue. So we are right, okay?
Yeah.
So how did we foster engagement and really reached or gained and sustainable growth for our platform? This is our Blue Planet Oval Office. You see in the background, it's a very nice room where we offer trainings for Blue Planet, and that's why I choose this background. And first of all, we changed the tonality. So we said, okay, we want to make it more easy, more glimpse in the eye, a little bit funny, not too serious. Yeah? And we defined a new slogan, which is called, "It's simply the better way to work." Yeah? And we also did a whole new logo and branding, so a very modern logo with this asterisk here. We also have our nice Blue Planet jackets. And we also defined a mission because, you know, every company has a purpose and a mission, so we also need a mission. And our mission is, Blue Planet is a global cross-functional platform which helps us to simplify and improve how we work together on a daily basis. This is our mission. And we also needed the global involvement, so we defined a global community manager network with more than 150 people worldwide, which are the go-to guys in the countries, and they also get all the creative materials from us, and they could also do this engagement locally. And what is very important is training. So we did a whole new training approach, and again, the user is in the focus, and also the use case of the user. So we defined 8 different modules, for example, how to work with documents, how to create a team site, how to collaborate on projects. So we didn't really put the technology in the focus, but the use case. And this worked very well. So we had about, only in headquarters, I think, 1,300 people trained, and all in all together, also online trainings, 2,000 people worldwide with Skype sessions. And of course, you always need giveaways, so we made some nice modern stickers with some fancy slogans on it. And what was also very nice, and you can also easily do it, we offered a profile photo session, a profile picture shooting at our headquarters, so everyone could come by our booth and get a professional profile picture taken and could upload it to Blue Planet and also use it for LinkedIn. And therefore, we had a very nice increase of our enriched profiles, and lots of people uploaded a picture, and this was very nice. And it's very easy. You just book a photographer for one day over, let's say, 4 times, and then it was very nice. I think only in Hamburg it was more than 1,000 people coming and having directly a nice profile picture, because everybody wants to have a profile picture, a nice one. So and there's no excuse. Yeah, I don't have a picture, then go there and shoot one. So it's fine. And what we also did was, we said, okay, what are really the normal use cases which are very frustrating for the user? You know, everyone knows some use cases which really get on your nerves. And then we said, okay, how was it before? And now, how can Blue Planet now help you to solve this frustration? And that is why I want to show you some very nice videos here. Huh? So basically that was the first one. We have 4. And always the use case is in focus and how can we solve it. I know everybody knows that final version is always pain. Yeah.
This is actually my favorite one.
Yeah. I think everybody knows this one. Here you go. Okay, so yeah, these are our nice videos, use case videos, and yeah, we also won an award for these videos at some, I don't know the exact name, but it was some creative award in Cannes, yeah, so very successful. And here you can see some pictures that it also was not only in Hamburg, it was really a global thing, and we were quite impressed when we offered all the materials open for everybody. What they did in the countries was amazing. They really branded the whole entrance, which we didn't even do in Hamburg. They branded the whole entrance with Blue Planet. We were like, whoa, what is going on in Ecuador? So very nice. And also in Jakarta, Madrid, everywhere. And what's very nice also in our production sites, you can see one picture where the people see it on the screen. And this is also very important to include our workers globally. So that is very nice, and we had, again, this glimpse in the eye. For example, bad hair day, Blue Planet can't help you with that, sorry. It thinks you look lovely, though. So also very, very nice. And these are some impressions of our global engagement. And I know there were some questions about KPIs, so we also have KPIs, and you can see it really worked out. So if you take a look at the left part, here you can see there's the upgrade. And after our engagement week, which was in the upgrade phase, you could really see an increase of our KPIs. So before it was about 6,000 different people on the platform each month, and afterwards it was already 8,000, and now we are at 9,500. So you can see our engagement is really working out. And we also had a best day ever, which is like almost 5,000 different unique users on our platform in September, which is our best value ever. And I think this shows how important it is to do it and that we are on the right track. And you can see it's really all the different averages increased really highly.
Yeah.
So I'll hand over to Ivan again.
We promised to talk as well about the cloud, about Office 365, and how do we consider to introduce Office 365 in our corporation. To do this, we need to really understand what's happening on our platform. What use cases do we really have on Blue Planet? And you see here, of course, our main use cases that we have. You probably know them all. So we have document management, we have large lists, we have video tubes, we have reporting front ends, we have an integrated OneDrive for business, so we have personal document, we have persistent chat rooms, and for all these use cases, we use one and a single SharePoint 2013 team site template. Only one single template, and it fulfills really every use case. It's not, let's say, 100% nice always, but we found always workarounds that it really fulfills the requirements that our business has. But now the game really changes for us. Our use cases remain the same, but you see Blue Planet is only one service because it's basically SharePoint. It's one service in the Office 365 cloud. And we need to know, or we need to translate really our use cases into those different services, because all those services have almost similar capabilities, and we need to, or we took our time in the past weeks or months and really tried them out in the daily work. So we used Microsoft Teams, we used Yammer, we used OneDrive, and we used as well Delph, and we came up then with the translation metrics, where we took again all our use cases. We took then concrete examples and we looked how we would solve it in Office 365. And over a couple of months, we were pretty confident that this is really the way to go. And we are unfortunately not talking about, let's say, 50 sites of some Blue Planet. Blue Planet is quite big, so we're talking about 5,000 sites that we need to actually translate. Of course, we will do first a clean up, but this is really our way to go. And we are pretty confident that this is this is the right approach to introduce Office 365. We will start with Microsoft Teams, with Yammer, with OneDrive, and as well with SharePoint Online, and Delph will also be available. Our collaboration platform and our communication platform both are built very hierarchically. And it is really a paradigm shift for us how Office 365 works. It's more a network. Everything is interconnected. Somebody would say as well is a little bit chaotic, but we need to find an answer for it. We need to translate Blue Planet and BlueNet to Office 365. And we, after long discussions, came up with the hub concept. So we in this year, in the beginning of this year, in January 2017, we introduced already our so-called home offsite. So each function got again a site where they can link related sites to. So we implemented a home of finance, a home of supply chain, and all the related sites that are related to a function could be linked to this site. And this is our way to go for the collaboration part in Office 365, where we will integrate again all those home offsites. And we took a look at the roadmap of Microsoft, and there you can see that I think in the second quarter of 2018, they will introduce hub sites, and they will fit perfectly for our concept that we have here. Our intranet will still be hierarchically, because we need to provide our local affiliates as well in our own intranet experience. They need to be able to brand their sites how they want we of course will provide a template, but they need really the capability to change the look and feel, to put content in it. And what we will do at the same time is we will also link our home offsites into the intranet, so that we will provide a user journey for all our end users, that they know, okay, if I go to the internet, they have the possibility to go onto the home offsites, but you know probably Office 365 already. You have also the freedom to follow only the sites that you really need for your work. And we are pretty confident that this target concept is the concept for us to go into the Office 365 cloud.
And you can just, one thing to add, you can also see that these small hubs are already, or home offsites we have in Blue Planet, are already some kind of internet sites for each function. But it's not an editorial team behind it, it's the users themselves creating user-generated content, and that is why the internet is changing. So in the future we will still have this corporate information and the need of corporate information to push outside, but there will be much more user-generated content personalized per function, and that is why we have this hub concept. And if you click there you can see a first mock-up of our intranet on Office 365 with also first Office 365 integrations. Because, I mean, if you see the starting page of Office 365 from Microsoft, I think they totally forgot the intranet concept, if you ask me. So there's no internet inside, and we said, okay, not possible for us. That is why we really tried to build an intranet which is very standard, because we really want to keep the standard to have the features from the cloud really easily without destroying something. But this is our approach with our corporate branding. We have in the top, you can see we have the teaser news and stage news, and below there's a Yammer feed integrated, and also right to this you can see a documents area. And there you can find all your documents, and it doesn't matter where they are. They can be on-premise, and in Office 365, the last documents, they are always in this list, which is very nice. Yeah? And of course, some other parts of...
And at the same time, we will also provide the possibility to access your sites also from the internet. So we will provide this area called favorites, where you can access all your sites that you are following in Office 365, or the sites that you follow on our on-premise environment, because Blue Planet will, during our migration period, still be there. You know, we have a phase where we have both collaboration systems at this time.
And of course, in the top left hand side, you can see the Office 365 menu. So it's also directly integrated, of course. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and but I think our engagement is not stopping yet, now, because I think it's getting even more, because what is Office 365? I think the product name Office 365 is already quite bad from Microsoft, because everybody says, okay, what is it? I know Word, I know PowerPoint, what do you want from me? Yeah, but they have to understand that it's a whole cloud suite, and we really have to put a lot of engagement and focus in what to use when. And I mean, if you ask me, if I take a look now, I was also confused, and I'm still confused, to be honest. We are really deep diving into it now. Of course, you have nice freedom of tools, you have nice flexibility, but you really also have to work and see, okay, I need to really solve my use case very quickly. What should I do now? And I don't have time to play around, so we really need to offer the people the consultancy, what to use when, how did they do it on Blue Planet, and how can they do it in the future on Office 365. And this means for us, if you can click, engagement, of course, is to be continued. All right, that's from our side.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes, please.
That's okay, I can probably talk about it. Hi, I'm Angelo from the Boston Consulting Group.
Hi.
You talked about the KPI.
Mm-hmm.
So did you see the spikes during the campaign? I understand this was like a campaign that you ran for the key features on your intranet, right?
Yeah.
Was it was it a sustained thing beyond the campaign, or do you run the campaign throughout the year?
Unfortunately, we could not, didn't have KPIs during migration phase. So that is why I had this upgrade field in the presentation, because we had, during this period, we didn't have any KPIs. But we had the last KPIs, and then we started it again with the new KPIs. But you can see, so we had one global week, which was in February, and there you could see that at least the awareness was increasing, and that at least all the people in the world from then on knew that this is our platform to share documents. So this is, but we didn't have exact KPIs during the upgrade, unfortunately.
So no, my question was around the campaign that you ran.
Yeah.
The results that you showed, were the numbers primarily because of during the campaign period, or did the numbers continue to be high after the campaign?
No, it was continuously growing. Of course, we had this big bang in February, but we continuously had engagement. For example, video concepts, and you can see it was increasingly going up. So it wasn't like one peak and then again up. But for visit, it was like this. But what I can tell you is we also were measuring social KPIs, for example, comments, posts. And there you can see that when we do activity, it's always going up. And then a little bit, and then going down again, but it's never like below the line. So it's increasingly, but it has peaks due to social. So we really can see how the campaigns are working. We had one very nice example, which was you always get the people at Bayersdorf with soccer, for example. So we had during the championship 2000, when was it? 2014? No, 16, the Euro 2016. We had a very nice betting game on Blue Planet. And there you could see it was like really going up, and everybody was really commenting, and this is how you get the users then. Yeah.
Sorry, just one. Did you have any personalization features implemented?
Sorry, what kind of features?
Personalization of pages.
Yeah, so this is where our journey is now going. So we really want to have a personalized workplace. This is our future vision, which we are building now, and you can see that in the future it will be, let's say, 25% corporate information, and the rest, if you ask us, will be totally personalized. Yeah? And what we have now is already these parts, because we have some iframes with the news feed so you have the intranet, and there's an iframe with the news feed, your personal documents on OneDrive, and the hashtags you are following, and your quick links. So this kind of personalization we already have now. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. I don't know.
Hello there, I'm Janine Waitman from Penspin. I'm a knowledge manager, and I'm in a team of 2, so a very small team playing big, bringing about a digital workplace. I commend your efforts in the promotional campaigns and getting engagement. I would love to be able to convince my engineering managers to give me the budget for lovely jackets like that. My question is, if you were to do your promotional campaign again, but with a very small budget, and what element would you do again? Would it be the merchandise? Would it be the global rollout with the banners? What was the turning point for you?
That's a very good question. I think the good thing is that to really have this big engagement concept, I mean, I showed one slide, but it was, you can say, a kind of engagement Bible. It was like 80 slides or 80 sites of target group audiences, and this is we did together with an agency one time, but now we have it and really can use it for the future. And I would say, so video is always working. We will do, I think, more videos, which we can also do on our own. Now we have an app where we can really have videos very easily edited, and video will be one thing, and I think you always need to have some promotion. And what is also working, if you have one nice winning prize, for example, an iPad, yeah, and then you really ask the people, okay, what's your favorite use case? Post it on Blue Planet with the hashtag Blue Planet engagement, and then you can win an iPad. And I mean, an iPad is not expensive, and you have so much people really posting. And of course, it's not really the business case behind, but for the first time to get in touch with the platform, I think it's working. Yeah.
Typical German question regarding the photo booth. Sorry, I'm Uta from Bosch, from a part of Bosch. I wonder that you have such a big feedback that people are really willing to do the pictures. I think that depends on company culture, but I think we know in Germany that the Work Council is has a deep impact. So could you please describe a little bit to the scenario?
I can tell you that also for us it's very challenging to speak with the Workers' Council, because I as a project leader had to spend so many times to really get in to them, talk to them, showing them, and it was very hard. We had to really, for example, we are not allowed, and it's also a fun fact, I forgot this one, you are not allowed to see who is following you on the platform. So you are not allowed to see your follower, which is really nonsense, and I was really crying, yeah? I was really crying in the negotiations, but it is like this. I don't know why, but they said, no, that's not allowed, and we had to really hide your personal followers, which is, I mean, when I post something, I want to know who can read it. So this is really nonsense at all, but this is something which was, based on the Workers' Council. But I think for the photo booth, I would say, I mean, it's a very nice feature, and it's really, you can decide if you want to do it as an employee. And so we help the people, and they can also use it for their private reasons. And I think there we didn't have any problems with the Workers' Council, because we said it's totally up to you. You have to agree the terms of use. You have to agree the data privacy statement, and then you can go. So I think this was something. And they also came by and took a picture. Yeah. So. But I mean, every employee, also the elder ones, are now having their profile pictures on Facebook and whatever. I gotta get why they shouldn't have it in business, yeah? So I think, I know the discussions, but I can't understand it, to be honest.
What is important to add maybe is that we made as well the experience that it is not very good for us if the IT is doing the negotiations with the Workers' Council, because the IT only delivers always the platform.
Here you go.
And exactly, and the business really has the arguments why they need it. So, and this was for us really also important to get Julian as a business owner for the platform, because he was doing all this negotiation with the Workers' Council, and yeah.
So I think there was one question.
I was about to ask you about like the secret for collaboration. I guess you just, the success of this project, but I guess you just shared it right now.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty similar background. So we studied the same thing. We started at Biostorf both as a trainer for our digital collaboration environment, and we see things mostly the same way, but we have also very emotional discussions about stuff.
Yeah, we can argue a lot, which is really important.
Yeah, which is really important. And I think this is really our secret, that we have a really strong bond, yeah. He was a question.
You wanted one question, yeah.
Just one final question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, have you already...
Just introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Nuno Santos from Portugal. I work in Jordan Martins Group, which is a retailer in Portugal, Poland, Colombia. I just wanted to ask you about the governance module that you are going to work with, because you're merging two different approaches, and I think that it's interesting to know how you're going to, I would say, to merge top-down communications with content generated by the users and also from different geographies.
I think this is a very good question, and this is, to be honest, also something we really have to work on now, and I think we really have to learn. We will do a small pilot for our IT section, which is going live beginning next year, and there's also the communication part, but I think you really, from a corporate communications perspective, you really have to let go. Yeah, you have to see, okay, which is really top-down communication, and then you have to really make sure this needs to reach everybody. And of course also in the different tools, because many people won't maybe go to the intranet anymore. They will have their mobile apps, but then we have to make sure that whatever, a bot or something else, will push this information into the apps. So this really, these new formats needs to be developed by corporate communications, and then I think it will be more user-generated content. I mean, to be honest, now it's like this. There's a supply chain conference. There's somebody who's like really writing something. It goes to corporate communications. Somebody is checking it, maybe changing some things, but that's it. And why is it not possible in the future that the supply chain guy really uploads it himself? Yeah. So I think the game is changing, and the corporate communications has to deliver new formats in the future.
This is a really good segue to our new speaker. So first of all, thank you for a great presentation and beautiful jackets.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, this question about how do you actually merge the top-down versus bottom-up and cultures, this is a very good intro to our next speaker, Sylvia from, so that's actually a good question. Where are you from? Because it used to be Quintiles, then Quintiles IMS, and now it's IQVIA.
And he's probably the only person who would put his hand up when I ask if anybody knows the company. Yes.
I work for a law firm, so that's it.
Okay, fun fact. So my kids they were having a swimming gala, and the parents had to take part, or were asked to take part, and I thought, I don't swim a lot, but I thought, yeah, I'm going to show them, I can get involved. So I took part, and does anybody remember Smack the Pony? Do you remember the lady wearing the big hat, doing the swimming, going up and down the lanes? She's wearing this big hat, going up and down the lanes, and the next time the next lady sees her, she's got fruit in her hat, has to really keep her head out of water, and the next time there's birds flying around, so really important she keeps her hair out of the water. Anyway, that was me, and the kids have been there with their banners going, go mum, and afterwards they were like, yeah, don't do that again, mum. Thanks.
I don't know if I can beat that, actually. My fun fact is that had I been here last week, I'd have been able to say I played in a band, but we split up after 15 years, and we have the distinction of being the only band ever to split up due to musical similarities. So that's me. A beautiful dream, building a social intranet in professional services. First of all, I'm just going to talk through some of the background factors that influenced us while we were implementing our new intranet. And there's some animation on here, I think. Business factors. The legal services industry is going through a hell of a lot of change at the moment. Has been for some time, and that's going to carry on for the foreseeable future. There's an awful lot of disruption going on, a lot of reinvention, consolidation. So, a lot of people are looking at their businesses and saying, okay, how do we want to look? How do we serve our clients? What do we look like going forward? So there's a whole raft of questions going on at the same time as we're building the intranet, which obviously, we're dictating to a certain extent our approach. And then technology. Well, technology, you might not believe this, but technology is actually happening in law firms. Even AI is being mentioned. Okay, might be some way in the future, but there's an awful lot going on, and we have to think about how that's going to affect our business in the future. Most importantly, how we can use technology to improve client service and so on. Osborne Clarke has a distinction of being known for various reasons in the market as a technology law firm, and probably our use of technology doesn't quite match that of our clients. One of our leading mantras really has been, to improve the use of technology, and that's what we intended to do and intend to do as we move forward with our intranet. And the last one, and I nicked this slide from somewhere else. This wasn't actually supposed to be on this slide, but I may as well mention it anyway because it's affecting everybody. Brexit. So over to you, Sophie, I think.
All right. Why we needed an intranet. So we're going to just look at 4 key reasons that we needed to move to a new intranet beyond just the technical one of our old platform was about to fall over, SharePoint 2008. We're now on 2013. Mike, so if you want to speak about...
Yeah. Then in 2012, we started to expand rapidly. We already had 3 offices in the UK, but we merged with firms in Spain and Italy, and it took off from there. And now we're in almost every European country. We're in the US, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, you name it. So, you know, our size effectively has doubled. Compared to some of the other people who've been up here speaking, we're not enormous. We've got about 1,600 employees, not 360,000 like Wells Fargo. But we have had that doubling in size, and that's been a huge influence. The other thing about our growth is, has anybody ever heard of a Swiss Verein? See, somebody from a law firm. It's not an implement for getting stones out of horses' hooves, but it's a company structure. And what it does, it's almost like a coat hanger upon which you can hang different entities to link them together. And that's what we are. So when we grow internationally, we're actually a whole raft of different organisations, separate organisations, joined through a Swiss Verein. And that has implications on the design of our intranet, how information can be shared, and all those sorts of good things. So that was a big influence as we were preparing it.
Thank you. So knowledge being a law firm, this is at the absolute core of what we do. So really, really important to be able to share knowledge and to find knowledge. But on our old system, well, first of all, there was an intranet that was just good for the UK, and that the other countries really couldn't participate in. And also, people had given up using the search completely. In fact, when we moved to our new intranet, there was a whole re-education around, no, just try. Just search for it. It was revelation. Beyond that, people had even given up using the intranet itself. And so copious emails being sort of sent round, and if somebody was trying to find something out. Also, in terms of who could share knowledge, it was a very top-down kind of approach. So we really wanted to move to a new system where anybody could start to contribute and find knowledge and share knowledge.
And then communication. Sophie mentioned email. And, you know, email, I'm sure for many organisations, has become the default method of communication. We really wanted people to move away from that. Inboxes were getting clogged, and it's just not a great way of collaborating. A lot of information, a lot of communications were top-down, and we wanted more two-way communication. And we wanted to focus on being more collaborative and audiencing across the international business. So the internet offered us an opportunity to step change the way we communicate internally, and particularly around that element of collaboration.
So in terms of innovation, I'm sure you all have various sort of innovation initiatives or departments or whatever going off in your organizations, because we're in such a time of technological disruption. We've got to be on our toes and finding out new ways of doing things and harnessing the ideas of all our employees. So we needed something that was going to allow that. Clearly, where we were very fragmented and very difficult, especially for the different countries, to be talking to each other, to know even what they did. And for the different practice areas and the groups, the sectors that we focused on, it was very difficult for people to know who did what and to be able to start sort of cross-fertilizing ideas and so on. And so we really wanted to be able to cut across hierarchies as well and get people to come out of their silos. So this is really the main finding we had from building our social intranet. I mean, social, so it's about people after all. And on reflection, Mike and I were saying, really, it was just a deeply human and very political affair in building the internet. And there's been quite a number of people sort of talking about all the negotiating having to be done with all the different groups. And there was certainly a lot of that. So we want to share some of our stories. I don't know if they're war stories, but some of our stories about building this social intranet.
They're actually Sherlock Holmes stories. And this one is entitled The Case of the Missing Strategy. This is about people being able to see the big picture, but also being able to use the intranet to achieve strategy and how those things balance out. So this story involves the intranet development team, but also our international chief executive. When we first looked at the structure for the international intranet, our big focus was on giving people the tools and the ability to share knowledge and all of those things that actually would help push our strategy forward. Our chief executive wanted something slightly different. He wanted to tell people what the strategy was. We thought, okay, well, that's a bit of a blunt instrument on its own. But he was really pushing for that. And in the end, we had to somehow manage those two to make sure that the strategy was surfaced all the way through the intranet, because he was paying for it, and that people were able to use the intranet to push the strategy forward. The way we did that eventually was to pepper the intranet with easy guides, easy guide to the strategy, so people can always check back to see how what they're doing relates to the way we're achieving the strategy. So we solved the mystery.
Next, the case of the mysterious map. So this is around how we were going to structure our intranet. So we'd already decided in our, we had a steering group that no content, no page. And as Mike has mentioned, we were made up of a collection of differently owned law firms, but all had to be kind of working as one. So for example, we would have an HR area, and you could drop down to the UK, and there would be sort of training, and there would be about payroll and so on. And then in France, if there wasn't the equivalent, we wouldn't put that content there, because what's the point? There's nothing to put on there. Oh, except one of the senior managers had a very different idea. And he really, really wanted each country to adopt the same structure as every other country, modelling it on the UK. So with my favourite technology tools, paper and a piece of and a pencil, we were in a room for hours, a number of times, drawing up what the structure could look like, and the boxes and the dotted lines, and trying to work it through. And eventually I realised that actually it wasn't about the structure of the intranet so much. He was actually just frustrated about the organisational structure within those different countries as they were. It was nothing to do with the intranet. It was just frustration that it didn't already kind of look as he was imagining in his mind. So we had to kind of work a way out of this impasse without just continually drawing more boxes. And so we went to the users, and with our supplier, Easy SharePoint, built a wireframe and had users from across the different countries and different functions each sort of answer various questions. They had to find their way to particular information. And the data came out and showed us that actually the way we were thinking would work. So this was something very tangible that we could take back to this manager and say, look, I think it will work based on what the users are already telling us. So with various caveats, we managed to sort of move out of there and build the kind of structure that we were originally intending.
Okay, the case of the antisocial manager. And this really is summed up in the phrase, not everybody takes to social, as are some more of these actually. When we announced that we were launching a social intranet, we had one manager who went to her team and said, if I catch anybody blogging, I'll sack them. not entirely legal, but but she was adamant. It was a symptom of a wider natural caution that I think a lot of businesses have, perhaps particularly law firms. And we really had to think about how we engaged people with using social and actually just getting out there and effectively putting their soul, bearing their soul on the intranet. The way we did that was we had various policies and that sort of thing. We actually thought, okay, what can we do that will actually really sort of engage with people? So we came up with the social etiquette guide, which wasn't prescriptive. It was just, you know, about how you could behave on the intranet and what you should consider when you're posting on there. And that had a huge impact because people actually started posting there. We also put in a feedback mechanism, so you could report any post and it would be looked into immediately. And to date, we actually haven't had any posts reported, which either shows how lethargic people are or the fact that all of the posts are perfectly okay. I think the thing that really puts people off, or was putting people off, was the thought that as soon as they posted anything on the intranet, it's being scrutinised by 600 other lawyers. And, you know, that can be deeply disturbing. It's deeply disturbing for me. And the lesson is that trust is vital. You know, you have to let your people just get out there and post, and people will make mistakes, but you can't stop them posting in the first place. And the only way they learn is actually by getting out there and doing it.
The case of the dependent independence movement. Okay, so a few weeks before launch, and we're gearing everybody up, doing all our sort of comms, getting people ready. And then one of the countries says, no, actually, we're not going to launch then, because we've been planning a big bang launch to all the different countries. And it's like, lots of heads together, lots of senior people talking. Oh my goodness, how are we going to resolve this? And what transpired was actually there was quite a bit of tension within that country who'd previously had their own intranet, very news-based, especially for them. And I think there was a fear of losing their own identity. And there was also, allied with that, a fear of exposure, because actually they hadn't developed their content very fully at all beyond the news that they'd previously had. So how we looked at working this through, we had our CEO talking to the lead of that country, and they were actually in agreement that we needed to have an international focus for everyone to feel they're part of this international business while still having the local feel and having local feeling pages and in their own language. So the leader of that country could relay that back to his guys. We also worked with them in terms of developing their content. When they said, oh, actually, no, then another country got cold feet and said, oh, no, us too, actually, no, we'd like to delay just a bit. We're going to work on our content. So made a trip to Paris, heard here, but had to work through training people up a bit further, and they developed their content. So finally, we did launch. This is in 2015 on Mike's birthday. And then about a couple of months later, the other two countries launched also.
So our final story, the case of the not very advanced users.
Oh no, I've got a story as well.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
What's your story?
Is that one?
Oh, it's not the final story. Sorry, that's what Sophie's saying. There is another story. I was getting ahead of myself. And you were getting excited because obviously after we finished you can have lunch. So the case of the not very advanced users. We were very keen, as I'm sure most people who launch social intranets are, to get the leadership team using social to get, so they had the visibility and so they would act as role models. And this is very much about the fear of exposure because, what we found out when we approached them was a lot of them didn't really know what social media was or how to use it. My children are very fond of saying to me that Facebook is where the old folks hang. But in our case, even the old folks didn't hang there. So I don't know what that means about their demographics. Sorry, workplace people. So we needed somehow to get them using the social functionality. And this is actually Sophie went out and did an awful lot of 15-minute sessions, just talking people through what they could do. And these sessions actually turned into confessions in many cases. And allowing people to confess that they didn't really know how to do it was far easier than setting up some basic courses for a lot of people and calling them advanced courses. So that actually meant, I mean, it meant that some people started using it. Do we have all of the leadership team using the intranet? No, we don't. You know, would we ideally have them using it? Yes, we would. But we have enough people using it to actually give a head of steam. And I think now that's actually having some cut through in terms of the number of people using social.
This is the last story. The case of the nervous champions. So this was about the people who would be going to be creating the content, the more sort of static content for the company. And so previously we just had a few people who knew how to do editing and so on. And we had to really expand that a lot. And there were a lot of very nervous people who didn't feel up to it, or people who knew that they were going to have to kind of learn new skills. So a real fear of change, the big change. And again, I think a fear of failure and a sense of it being an overwhelming task. How are we going to bring this all together? So there's sort of three main ways we worked through this. We built a content network. So about a year before we actually launched, we identified who the key people were in each function, each country, that we really needed to connect with and start building those relationships with. And we had a series of briefings to bring them along on the journey as we went along. And then it got to the point that they could receive training. And so we had some very intensive training sessions. And some people, as I'm sure you'll find took to it much more easily than others. But it was great that they were working with each other as well, and so they could be asking questions of each other. And now that we're launched, we have feedback and find out sessions. So these are kind of like 6 monthly calls, and we usually do a big kind of Skype call so everyone can load in, where the main editors can put all their questions, share their feedback, and we can teach them some new sort of ways of doing things. Some successes, nearly there, nearly food time. So we have had some successes with our social intranet. Now, actually, we had a pivotal moment this year, which we called the Jeff moment. So there was a banking partner, and he needed to find somebody called Jeff. So he did the right thing. He went to the intranet. He typed in the name Jeff, hit return. But actually, he hadn't done it in the search box. He'd done it in the social post, and he'd just written Jeff. Before you know it, a picture of Jeff Capes has appeared. A picture of Jeff Hurst. A picture of Geoffrey Chaucer. They're very educated in law firms. And hashtag Jeff came along, and suddenly everybody was loading in with their pictures of Jeff. And it became our top trending hashtag ever. We even found some banking partners were typing very serious things about LIBOR rate, hashtag LIBOR, hashtag Jeff, because they knew it was going to get their attention. And it was wonderful, actually, seeing all these people come out of the woodwork, either liking or commenting, who we didn't know were taking part, because there was a lot of people just watching rather than participating. So it's one of those fabulous moments that started as a mistake and really kind of bore fruit on the social intranet. A second thing, it was wonderful to see a trainee decide to start blogging about AI. So this was one of the things we've been looking to do, really cut across the hierarchies, not just have sort of top-down messages. And so there's no, nobody has to validate or confirm it's okay to put this on the internet. He just started blogging about AI, and it got picked up by other people, and they shared his posts. And that was exactly one of the things that we wanted to achieve from the internet. And then finally, our IT service desk. So they've always used the intranet to post news, but they did have to rely on sending out emails as well. But actually, they found that the intranet is fantastic for them to share updates on downtime or new systems. And we do some analytics on who are the most followed people on the intranet. And our service desk manager is the most followed person in the entire site. He's very pleased with that. Nobody's taken his crown.
Okay, and obviously with successes, actually not with successes, with failures come learning points. I'm not sure which way around that goes. So we have some learning points. The first is, as Sophie said at the outset, this was a deeply human but political affair. And one of the lessons is put people at the heart of your intranet. They're the users. Don't let it be overly technical. Don't let it be led by structures that don't make sense. Put people at the heart of it. And I think that's something we're moving towards. We haven't done that perfectly. And that's, as we go forward, something we're going to be looking at. Second, keep it simple. Again, Sophie mentioned some of the battles we had when we were designing the structure. And I think, with hindsight, we would have been a lot more forceful about the need to keep the whole thing simple. If you're designing an international intranet, start big and stay big. We ended up being dragged into a few silos that are still there that we'd rather have not been dragged into. And I think if your ambition is to have an international intranet, always keep that at the forefront and don't let people construct their own little silos as they go on. And fourthly, employ Jeff if you're able to. Although he works for us. And then finally, we have 2 new objectives.
One, mobile. We really haven't cracked this one. That was part of our objective at the very outset, but we just haven't cracked the security nut because we're on premise, and I'm sure if we throw enough money at it, we can crack it, but we just haven't sorted that one yet, so that's really high on our agenda.
And the second one is video. When we launched the intranet, it was one of those things, video would be nice to have, but it always remained as a nice to have, and we didn't implement any sort of video capability or specific video capability as we were designing it. Since then, we've invested in a very nice television studio with lots of cameras and microphones and that sort of thing. We're churning out lots and lots of video. The problem is we can't use it as fully as we would want to on the intranet. And I think, it's both a learning point and an objective that somehow now we need to retrofit the videos we're making to a structure which wasn't designed for them. So I'm sure some of the suppliers here today will have something to say about that. I think that's about it from us, isn't it? Yeah. So you can either ask us some questions or you can go and have lunch. Well, there's somebody at the back over there.
Hi, I'm Rob Bridges from the BBC. Professionally, not here as a journalist or anything like that. I've got one really quick question. When you talked about your social etiquette guide, I'm pretty sure most of us will have had some experience of producing something similar. How long was your version of Don't Be a Dick?
It was actually Don't Be a Dick or Else. It wasn't that long, actually. I mean, these things, I think, are always better, shorter. People don't memorise or don't read anything that's particularly long. So we try to keep it to less than 1 page and to make it engaging as well. You don't want to be talking down to people. You don't want to be being prescriptive. And I think that, we just gave people the bare bones, hopefully in a fairly amusing way.
And I think we talked about don't post anything that you wouldn't be prepared to see up on a massive banner outside the office. Yeah. Kind of use that as your principle.
And what we've done, when people do post stupid things, we do put them on a massive banner outside the office. No other questions? Oh, there is one.
I have one question for you guys.
Okay.
Just in terms of the knowledge. So how much of the knowledge is purely internal versus actually leveraged externally? Especially now that you've set up also this video studio, and how much is expected to be internal only versus facing?
Well, I think it's more and more getting blurred, because you'll quite often see somebody posting, for example, there's like a Brexit briefing. So somebody does, my boss does a daily Brexit briefing, but he posts this on LinkedIn as well. So, it really does, is beginning to get quite blurred. Obviously, there's key information, I don't know, around sort of clients or something that isn't for external consumption.
So how do you ensure that whatever you're doing with your social intranet aligns with your organization's goals?
Yep.
Have you
Yeah.
done that pre-work? Or?
Yeah, so in the way we structured the intranet, we created sites and really made them, so there's core sectors that we focus on, digital business and transport and automotive, life sciences, I've forgotten the key ones. And so we created those sites already, and we encouraged people to follow those sites. So it was kind of encouraging them to have conversations that were around those particular areas. Equally, we did it for the core kind of legal areas that we specialize in, sort of corporate, commercial, employment, so that conversations would be happening around those areas. One thing we didn't anticipate was how much just the hashtags were going to sort of take off. And sometimes there's a bit of tension about, oh, should I be posting on the employment site here, or do I just post to everyone on hashtag employment? So that's just something that's developing, but that's how we try to gear it to what the company was about.
Hi, my name is Rita, and I'm from McDonald, which is an engineering company. What I'm struggling at the moment with is kind of, as you mentioned, you have some of the countries who really would like to stick to their local information, but obviously the international internet would promote international news. How did you make sure that actually whatever international content they have, they're not just going to promote it locally?
Yeah, that is an ongoing tension. For example, we did find that our Amsterdam team, who are small, because we're a large organisation in the UK, and there's like 12 of them, and we all have lunch together, every day. And what do they need an intranet for? But they've actually got their own kind of team site, and that's really sort of working for them. But I know that my key contact there has to kind of bug people and say, that's really good, share that more widely, share it more widely. So people can follow the different country pages as well, but people will be more inclined to do it in their own language. So it's a balance. We also have, sort of working with Germany, they've done a really good kind of training exercise with their offices. And when you fire up Internet Explorer, you have the international intranet. But when we look at our stats, boom, the highest after the homepage is Germany, and they'll go to their own sort of German area. But individuals from the German practices are following the employment page, following the digital business area. So actually it works quite well having those, the core, as I was just sort of mentioning, having our core areas with sort of team sites as well, so that people can have those conversations across the different businesses.
Germany is a very interesting one, actually, because they decided early on, unilaterally, that their site would be German language, and the rest of the intranet is in English. So, of course, anybody who doesn't speak German can't understand, what they're talking about. So we came to an agreement with them that, as well as their headline in German, but often in English, actually, if the headline was in German, they put a subheading in English, just briefly explaining what the story was about. And that means that when we produce our weekly newsletter, for example, we can just have a quick look through the German site, see if there's anything of interest, and if there is, they add an English translation. It's not perfect, but at least we're engaging with them, we're having that conversation, and they understand that, you know, their content may be shared internationally.
Thank you so much.
Is that it? Brilliant. Enjoy lunch. Thank you.
All the majority of speakers will be, of course, in the exhibition area during lunch. So if you have more questions, please do go ahead and ask. Otherwise, thank you so much to everyone for such a productive morning. And I'm going to let you go to lunch in a second. Just want to let you know what is going to happen after lunch. So we have plenty of sessions right now. Straight away, after the break, we're going into the stream. So there are going to be 2 sessions going parallel. One here and the second one in the rooms 4 and 5. We're going to guide you there. So, but they are in the way where you go to the bathroom, just further away on the corridor. So you can choose whichever you want. You can move from room to room. And then we're going to go to the Challenge Your Peers sessions at 3:50. So basically, these are the round tables. You can choose one of the 6 round tables you want to join. I'm just going to introduce them quickly. And the idea is, for this period of time, you brainstorm the challenges the moderators have for you. They, of course, are all in the app, but I wanted to... Oh, yeah, here. Yes, just wanted to introduce them very shortly. Roundtable 1. So Roundtable 1 will be about managing the change and Office 365 with Sarah Blackburn from Easy SharePoint. Roundtable number 2, the use of social networks in the enterprise with Teresa Urbankova. Number 3, sorry, a bit of an older version. So it's going to be about learning experience, as there's been a mistake here in the presentation, and the Office 365 again seems to be a massive topic these days, and different aspects, of course, are covered. Then we're going to have Peter England and intranet features built from scratch or out of the box. I think also many very important topic for many. And roundtable number 5, measurement with Lorna. There she's in the back. And finally, how do we change our internet into the digital workplace? And parallel to that, we're going to have a workshop with Seimani about the integration of workplace, and it's going to be in the room 3. So we're going to guide you there as well. So it's limited to 30 participants, which is a good size for an interactive session. They promise no PowerPoint, so it's going to be a lot of interaction. Anyway, so first the streams, then the workshop and the Challenge Your Peers Roundtable, and we meet here back in the plenary at 4:40. Enjoy your lunch, and don't forget the tweetback cards, please.